When a billionaire breaks down in public, most people look away. Daniel Hayes didn't. That single choice, walking across a crowded cafe to a stranger's table, shattered the carefully constructed walls around two broken lives. She had everything money could buy, but couldn't have the one thing that mattered. He had a son he barely knew how to reach. What began as an act of unexpected kindness became something neither of them saw coming. A collision between two people running from their own emptiness, forced to confront whether they were searching for salvation in each other, or just another way to avoid themselves. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button, and let's dive in. The cafe smelled like burnt coffee and old wood, the kind of place that survived on routine rather than quality. Daniel Hayes sat in the corner booth he'd claimed every Tuesday morning for the past year, laptop open, spreadsheet glowing, his 7-year-old son Ethan coloring silently beside him with the focused intensity of a kid who'd learned not to interrupt. Daniel's fingers moved across the keyboard in mechanical rhythm. Column D, row 18. Adjust the projection. Copy the formula down. His eyes tracked numbers that meant nothing beyond the paycheck they represented. Outside, October rain streaked the windows, turning the street into a gray wash of umbrellas and hurried footsteps. Dad. Dad, look. Just a second, bud. Ethan went back to his drawing, shoulders hunching slightly. The silence between them had weight to it, the kind that accumulated over months of half-present mornings and distracted evenings. Daniel told himself he was doing his best. Single father, full-time job, keeping food on the table and a roof overhead. The basics covered. That should count for something. Dad, that lady's crying. Daniel's fingers paused. What? Ethan pointed across the cafe with his green crayon. Over there. Daniel looked up, irritation flickering through him. He was 3 cells away from finishing this section, and then he saw her. She sat alone at a corner table, head bowed, one hand pressed against her forehead. Dark hair fell forward, curtaining her face, but her shoulders shook with the unmistakable rhythm of someone trying not to sob in public. A leather bag sat on the chair beside her, expensive looking. Her clothes were elegant, even in distress. Cream blouse, tailored black pants. Everything about her said money, control, success. Everything except the way she was falling apart. Daniel recognized her. Not personally, he'd never met her, but her face had been in the news enough times. Victoria Kane, CEO of Kane Industries. 30 years old and already a legend in tech and real estate development, Forbes had called her a visionary. Business journals wrote profiles with titles like The Woman Who Built an Empire Before 35. And she was crying in a half-empty cafe like her world had ended. Daniel looked back at his laptop. Not his business. He had work to finish, a kid to feed, his own problems. Whatever was happening in Victoria Kane's life existed in a completely different stratosphere from his own. She had assistants for breakdowns, therapists, people whose job was to care. She looks really sad, Ethan said quietly. Daniel saved his spreadsheet, closed the laptop, looked at his son, who was watching the woman with the uncomplicated empathy of childhood before walls went up and people learned to look away from suffering that wasn't convenient. When had Daniel learned to look away? He thought about Ethan's mother, how she'd left when their son was 10 months old. Just gone one morning, note on the counter, apology without explanation. He remembered the rage that followed, the bitterness that calcified into something cold and permanent. He'd spent years angry at her, at the universe, at the unfairness of being abandoned with a baby he hadn't been ready for. And somewhere in all that anger, he'd stopped being fully present for the child she'd left behind. Stay here, Daniel heard himself say. Don't leave this table. Where are you going? Just stay put. He stood before he could talk himself out of it, crossing the cafe's scuffed floor with no clear plan. This was stupid. She didn't need some random stranger inserting himself into her private moment. She'd probably tell him to get lost, and she'd be right to. Daniel stopped beside her table. Up close, he could see she was gripping a tissue, knuckles white, fighting for control. Her other hand clutched her phone like a lifeline. Hey, he said, eloquent, real smooth. Victoria's head snapped up, her eyes were red, makeup smudged, and for a second he saw raw pain there, unguarded. Then recognition flickered, not of him specifically, but of the intrusion, and she started building walls in real time. I'm fine, she said, voice tight. Thank you. Daniel should have walked away. Instead, he pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. You're not fine. The words came out gentler than he'd intended. And that's okay. Victoria stared at him. Do I know you? No. Then what are you doing? Honestly, I have no idea. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. My kid saw you crying, asked me about it, and I thought about walking away minding my own business, but I didn't. So this is about your conscience. Maybe. He met her eyes. Or maybe it's about the fact that you look like you could use someone to just sit here. No judgment. No expectations. Victoria's jaw tightened. She looked like she was about to tell him to leave, that she had everything under control, that she didn't need anything from anyone. The script was practically visible on her face. Instead, she laughed. It came out broken, almost a sob. You have no idea who I am, do you? Victoria Kane, CEO, very successful. I read the news. Then you know I don't do this. She gestured at her tear-streaked face. I don't fall apart in public. I don't let people see me weak. Everyone falls apart sometimes. Not me. Not where people can see. Her voice cracked on the last word. Daniel waited. The cafe hummed around them. Espresso machine hissing, low conversations, the clink of spoons against ceramic. Normal sounds for a world that kept turning regardless of individual catastrophes. I got the call this morning, Victoria said finally, staring at her phone. 4th time. 4 different agencies, 4 different rejections, always the same reason, just phrased differently. She looked up at him, eyes fierce despite the tears. I want to adopt a child, have wanted it for years, and apparently I'm not suitable. The words hung between them, sharp-edged with hurt. Not suitable, Daniel repeated. You, me. Bitter smile. Too focused on work, insufficient support network, lifestyle incompatible with child rearing. That's the official language. What they mean is I'm too driven, too independent, too much myself to be someone's mother. Daniel thought about his own journey into fatherhood, the terror, the resentment, the slow realization that he had no idea what he was doing and no one to ask. Being suitable doesn't make you good at it, he said. I was suitable by default. Biological father. Still had no clue. Victoria studied him. You have a child. Son, 7, over there. He glanced back at Ethan, who was watching them while pretending not to. His mom left when he was a baby. Just walked out one day. I'm sorry. Don't be. I was angry about it for years, furious actually. Built a whole identity around being the abandoned one, the single dad who got screwed over. Daniel picked at the edge of the table, old wood rough under his fingers. Spent so much time being mad that I forgot to actually be present for him. I show up. I provide. But present? Really there? Most days I'm going through the motions. He wasn't sure why he was telling her this. Maybe because she'd shown him her raw wound, so fair was fair. Maybe because sitting across from someone else's pain made his own harder to ignore. This morning, Victoria said quietly, the woman on the phone told me to consider my priorities. Like wanting a child is just another business acquisition I'm trying to make. Like the love I have to give, her voice broke, doesn't count because I also happen to be good at my job. That's bullshit. Is it? She met his eyes. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm trying to fill a void with motherhood instead of dealing with why the void exists in the first place. Or maybe you just want to be a mom. I don't know anymore. Victoria wiped her eyes, smearing mascara further. I've spent 10 years building Kane Industries. Buying companies, making deals, proving I could do everything they said I couldn't. And somewhere in all that proving, I forgot to build an actual life. Now I have money and power and influence. And I'm sitting alone in a cafe crying because I can't have the one thing that matters. Daniel thought about his apartment, cluttered with Ethan's toys and his own discarded work papers. About dinners eaten in silence while he checked emails. About bedtime stories rushed through so he could get back to his laptop. Success looks different than we think it will, he said. Does it feel like success to you, being a father? Honest answer? No. Most days it feels like I'm failing at the most important thing I'll ever do. Victoria laughed again, and this time it sounded almost genuine. At least you're doing it. I can't even get permission to fail. They sat in silence for a moment. Across the cafe, Ethan had abandoned his coloring to watch them fully now. No pretense. Daniel caught his eye and offered a small wave. Ethan waved back, tentative. "Your son seems sweet," Victoria said. "He is. Deserves better than me most days." "Don't say that. It's true." Daniel pushed back from the table slightly, suddenly exhausted. "I keep him fed, clothed, safe. But connected? I don't know how to connect with him. His mom left and I took it personally, like her leaving was about me instead of about her own demons. And I let that anger eat up all the space where love should have grown." Victoria's expression shifted. Recognition, maybe. "I do that too. Let work fill all the space. Tell myself it's enough, being successful, making things happen. But at night, in my apartment, surrounded by all the things success bought me, it's just quiet. Empty quiet." "Yeah, and everyone tells you it gets better, that you'll adjust, find balance, figure it out. But what if you don't? What if you wake up at 40, 50, 60 and realize you spent your whole life going through motions and missing the actual point?" Daniel had no answer for that. The fear was too familiar, too close to his own 3 a.m. thoughts, when insomnia and regret combined into something suffocating. His phone buzzed. Work email. Something about the quarterly report deadline. He ignored it. "I should let you get back to your son," Victoria said, but she didn't move to stand. "He's fine. Patient kid. Too patient, honestly. How long have you been coming here?" "Year, maybe. Every Tuesday. Same table, same burnt coffee. It's routine." "I hate routine," Victoria said. "That's what the agencies put in their reports. Inconsistent schedule, frequent travel, no established routine conducive to child rearing." She mimicked the clinical tone perfectly. "Like love requires a schedule." "Does your work require the travel?" "Some of it, but honestly, I choose it. Choose to say yes to every opportunity, every deal. Because if I'm moving, I don't have to think about being still. And being still means dealing with the fact that I'm lonely." The admission sat between them, stark and vulnerable. "I get that," Daniel said. "Different method, same result. I bury myself in work, in routine, in just getting through the day. Tells myself I'm doing it for Ethan, providing for him. But really I'm avoiding him because I don't know how to be what he needs." "What does he need?" "A father who shows up emotionally, not just physically. Who asks about his day and actually listens to the answer. Who plays with him instead of telling him I'm too busy. Who doesn't treat parenting like another task to check off a list." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "You know what you need to change. That's something. Knowing and doing are different." "Yes." She looked at him. "They are." Daniel's phone buzzed again. Then again. The quarterly report wasn't going to finish itself, and he had actual deadlines that mattered to people who signed his paychecks. Victoria was probably late for something too. Billionaire CEOs didn't have random open mornings to spend crying in cafes and talking to strangers. But neither of them moved. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "Sure." "Why did you come over here, really?" Daniel considered the question. "Because my kid saw you hurting and cared enough to point it out. And I realized I've been teaching him, without meaning to look away, to prioritize work and routine over human connection. And maybe I'm tired of that lesson. So I'm your teaching moment. Maybe we both are." He smiled slightly. "Or maybe I just didn't want you to sit here alone thinking you're not enough. Because from where I'm sitting, the system that rejected you is broken, not you." Victoria's eyes filled again, but she blinked the tears back. "I don't know you. You don't know me. This is weird." "I was going to say unexpected." "Yeah, it is that." She glanced at her phone, then set it face down on the table with visible effort. "I'm supposed to be in a meeting in 20 minutes. Acquisition deal. 6 months of negotiations coming to a head. If I'm not there, it could fall apart." "Are you going?" Victoria looked at him, then at her phone, then back at him. "No," she said, and the decision seemed to surprise her as much as it did him. "I'm not. Let them wait. Let it fall apart if it's that fragile. I'm tired of everything in my life being measured by what I accomplish instead of who I am." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Recognition, maybe. Or just the relief of meeting someone else who was tired of pretending to have it together. "I should really get back to Ethan," he said, but didn't stand. "And I should go salvage my deal. Neither of them moved. The cafe door opened, letting in a gust of cold October air and a couple shaking rain from their coats. The barista called out someone's order, normal life continuing around them, indifferent to whatever this moment was. "This is going to sound insane," Victoria said, "but can I ask you something else?" "Go ahead." "Do you want to have coffee?" "Actually have coffee, I mean, not this." She gestured at the space between them. "But intentionally, like, I don't know, like people who might want to talk again." Daniel should have said no. Should have recognized this for what it was. Two lonely people having a moment of connection that would fade as soon as reality reasserted itself. She was a billionaire CEO. He was a single dad barely keeping his head above water. Their worlds didn't overlap. "Yeah," he said instead. "I'd like that." Victoria smiled and it transformed her face. The polished CEO exterior cracked enough to show someone younger, more uncertain, more real. "I don't actually know your name." "Daniel. Daniel Hayes." "Victoria Kane. But you knew that already." "I did." "Does it bother you? The money thing? Should it?" "Most people either want something from me or resent me for having it. There's not usually a middle ground." Daniel thought about his apartment, his carefully budgeted life, the way he'd learned to make $50 stretch through groceries and Ethan's growing need for new shoes. Then he thought about Victoria's tears, the rawness of her admission about loneliness, the way wealth clearly hadn't insulated her from pain. "I don't want anything from you," he said, "and I don't resent you. Your money is your business. The person crying in a cafe about not being allowed to be a mother, that's who I'm talking to." Something in Victoria's expression softened. "Okay? Okay." She pulled a business card from her bag, then hesitated, crossed out the office number and wrote something else. "That's my personal cell. Text me if you want to actually have that coffee." Daniel took the card. Expensive cardstock, embossed lettering. He tucked it into his wallet next to Ethan's school photo and a grocery receipt. "I will," he said. "No pressure. If you don't, I'll understand." "I will," he repeated. Victoria stood, gathering her bag. She paused, looking down at him. "Thank you for not walking away. Thank you for not telling me to." She left then, posture straightening as she moved toward the door, CEO mask sliding back into place. But just before she stepped outside, she looked back and caught his eye. Smiled. Real and uncertain and human. Then she was gone, swallowed by the gray October morning. Daniel sat there for a moment, staring at the empty chair across from him. His laptop was still closed. The quarterly report was still unfinished. Ethan was still waiting patiently at their booth. Nothing had changed, really, and everything had. He went back to his son, sliding into the booth across from him. Ethan looked up from his drawing, a detailed picture of a dragon, surprisingly good for a 7-year-old. "Who was that lady?" Ethan asked. "Someone having a hard day." "Did you help her?" Daniel thought about it. "Maybe. I don't know. We helped each other, I think." "That's good." Ethan went back to coloring, adding purple fire to his dragon's mouth. Daniel opened his laptop, looked at the spreadsheet, then closed it again. "Hey, bud." "Yeah?" "Tell me about your dragon." Ethan's face lit up. "His name is Crimson, and he's actually a good dragon, not a mean one, and he lives in a mountain, but sometimes he comes down to help people who are lost, and—" Daniel listened, really listened, watching his son's animated gestures, the way his eyes shone when he talked about something he cared about. When had Ethan last looked at him like that? When had Daniel last asked him questions that weren't about homework or bedtime? The quarterly report could wait. Work could wait. For once, this moment, this kid, this story about a good dragon who helped lost people, that was enough. That evening, after Ethan was asleep, Daniel sat on his couch surrounded by the detritus of single parenthood. Lego bricks, discarded socks, homework papers. He pulled out Victoria's card, studying the handwritten number. It would be easy to throw it away. Chalk today up to a weird moment. Two strangers connecting briefly before returning to their separate lives. She'd probably already forgotten about him, busy with her billion-dollar deals and empire building. But he remembered the way she'd looked at him when she said she was tired of being measured by accomplishments instead of who she was. The raw honesty of admitting she'd spent years filling a void instead of examining why it existed. He knew that feeling, lived it every day. Daniel picked up his phone and typed, "This is Daniel from the cafe. Still want to have that coffee?" He stared at the message for 5 minutes before hitting send, then another 10 minutes waiting for a response that might never come. His phone lit up. Yes. When? They agreed on Thursday evening. A different cafe, she suggested, somewhere quieter. Neutral territory for two people who'd met in crisis and didn't know if that connection would survive without tears as catalyst. Daniel set his phone down and looked around his apartment. Same mess as always, same life, same responsibilities, same man who'd spent years going through motions. But something felt different. Small, barely noticeable, but there. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel was curious about what came next. Thursday arrived cold and clear, the kind of autumn evening that made the city look sharp-edged and beautiful. Daniel dropped Ethan at his friend Marcus's house. Marcus's mom, Linda, was used to last-minute babysitting requests and didn't ask questions, and drove across town to the address Victoria had sent. The cafe was nothing like their first meeting place. Upscale, modern, the kind of place where coffee cost $8 and came with foam art. Daniel felt immediately out of place in his work khakis and slightly wrinkled button-down. Victoria was already there, sitting at a corner table. She dressed down, jeans, simple sweater, but still looked elegant in a way Daniel couldn't define. She saw him and smiled, nervous. He crossed to her table, suddenly aware of how insane this was. What did they have in common beyond one emotional conversation? What were they supposed to talk about? "Hi," Victoria said. "Hi." They ordered coffee, his black, hers with oat milk, and sat in silence for a moment that stretched uncomfortably. "This is weird, right?" Victoria said finally. "So weird. We could just acknowledge it's weird and then move past it?" "Yeah, let's do that." Daniel wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, grateful for something to hold. "So, how's the empire building going?" Victoria laughed. "Direct, I like it. It's going. That deal I skipped Tuesday? They were furious, but it went through anyway. Turns out I'm not as indispensable as I thought." "How'd that feel? Liberating? Terrifying? Both?" She took a sip of her coffee. "I've spent so long being the person everyone needs that I forgot how to be unnecessary. Does that make sense?" "Yeah, I get that from the opposite direction. I'm so used to being just barely enough that I don't know what being more would look like." "Just barely enough at what?" "Fatherhood, work, existing, mostly." Daniel set his cup down. "Ethan asked me last night what I wanted to be when I grew up. He's 7 and already sees me as someone who hasn't figured it out yet." "What did you tell him?" "That I wanted to be present." He looked confused. Victoria smiled. "Kids are good at cutting through bullshit. The best." Daniel paused. "Can I ask what happened after you left the cafe Tuesday? Did you process the rejection or just move on?" Her smile faded. "Both? Neither? I went home, cried for 3 hours, then scheduled a meeting with my lawyer to explore other options. Because that's what I do. Hit a wall. Find a way around it." "Is there a way around it?" "Maybe. International adoption has different requirements. Surrogacy is an option, though that comes with its own complications. Or I could just accept that maybe motherhood isn't in my cards." "Do you believe that?" "No." The word came out fierce. "I don't. I can't. Because if I accept that, what was the point of everything else? All the success, the money, the power, if I can't use it to build the life I actually want, what's it for?" Daniel thought about his own life, the routine he'd built that served no purpose beyond survival. We're both stuck, aren't we? You can't have what you want despite all your resources. I have what I should want, but don't know how to appreciate it. That's depressing. Yeah. They sat with that for a moment. Around them, the cafe hummed with other people's conversations, other lives being lived. "Tell me about Ethan," Victoria said. "Really tell me, not the crisis version." So Daniel did. He talked about his son's obsession with dragons, his surprising talent for drawing, the way he organized his toys by color instead of type, how Ethan was quiet at school but came alive at home, narrating elaborate stories to himself while he played, how sometimes Daniel would watch him and feel this overwhelming love mixed with terror at how easy it was to screw up something so precious. Victoria listened with full attention, asking questions that showed she was really hearing him. When had someone last listened to Daniel talk about his kid without their eyes glazing over? He sounds wonderful, she said when he finished. He is. I just wish I was better at showing him I think so. Why aren't you? The question was direct, no judgment in it. Daniel considered. Because being present means being vulnerable, and I've spent 7 years armored against vulnerability. His mom leaving, it broke something in me, made me afraid of being fully invested in anything, because investment means the possibility of loss. So you keep him at arm's length to protect yourself. Yeah, which makes me a terrible father, and I know it, but knowing and changing, he trailed off. Knowing and changing are different, Victoria finished. You said that Tuesday. Did I? You did. She cupped her coffee in both hands. Can I tell you something that makes me sound terrible? Sure. Sometimes I wonder if I want to adopt because I genuinely want to be a mother, or because it's the one thing I've been told I can't have. Like maybe my whole identity is just achievement seeking, and a child would be another trophy. Daniel waited. The agencies basically said that to me, Victoria continued. Implied it anyway. That I was treating motherhood like a business acquisition. And part of me wonders if they're right. If I've been chasing this dream without examining whether it's real or just ego. Do you love kids? I think so. I've never spent much time around them. My life isn't structured for it. I work 60-hour weeks, travel constantly, live alone in an apartment that's more museum than home. She looked at him. How do you know the difference between wanting something because you love it and wanting it because you think you should? I don't know. But I can tell you that the first time I held Ethan, when he was 10 minutes old, I was terrified. Didn't feel love, just responsibility and panic. But over time, watching him grow, seeing his personality emerge, the love snuck up on me. Not the Hollywood version, not overwhelming perfect emotion, just this gradual realization that I'd do anything for this kid, even the things I'm scared of. Victoria was quiet. That's beautiful. It's honest. The beautiful version is a lie. They talked for 2 hours, conversation flowing easier than it should between two people who barely knew each other. Victoria told him about growing up wealthy but isolated, parents who measured worth in achievements, boarding schools that taught excellence but not connection. Daniel talked about his working-class childhood, parents who loved him but didn't understand his ambitions, the way leaving for college felt like betrayal and staying felt like giving up. By the time they left the cafe, night had fully fallen. They stood on the sidewalk, breath fogging in the cold air. I should go pick up Ethan, Daniel said, and I should go home to my very empty, very quiet apartment. Want to not do that? Victoria looked at him. What's the alternative? I don't know. Walk around? It's cold but clear. We could just keep talking. She smiled. Okay. They walked through the city as it transitioned from business day to evening life. Past restaurants filling with dinner crowds, bars with their happy hour specials, late-night shops still open. They talked about everything and nothing. Favorite foods, worst jobs, embarrassing moments, fears they'd never said aloud. I'm terrified of being alone forever, Victoria admitted as they passed a park where families were packing up from evening picnics. Like I'll wake up at 60 and realize I built this massive success but have no one to share it with. I'm terrified of being alone with other people, Daniel countered. Like I'll spend Ethan's whole childhood physically present but emotionally absent, and he'll grow up feeling like I never really saw him. We're quite a pair. Yeah. They ended up at a small playground, empty in the evening cold. Victoria sat on a swing, pushing herself gently back and forth. Daniel took the one next to her. This is nice, she said. Just sitting, not doing. When's the last time you did nothing? Years. Actually, years. She looked at him. You? Tuesday, when I closed my laptop and listened to Ethan talk about his dragon. Felt revolutionary. Victoria laughed. We're both disasters. Absolutely. They sat in companionable silence, swings creaking. Daniel's phone buzzed, Linda checking when he'd be by for Ethan. He typed back 30 minutes and pocketed it. I should let you go, Victoria said. Probably. Neither of them moved. Can we do this again, she asked, or is this just a weird moment that made sense in context? Daniel thought about it, about the ease of talking to her, The way she asked real questions and gave real answers. About how she didn't expect him to have everything together and didn't pretend she did either. "I'd like to do it again," he said. "Yeah?" "Yeah." They exchanged numbers properly this time, no business cards, made tentative plans for the following week. As Daniel stood to leave, Victoria caught his hand. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me Tuesday, for tonight, for not expecting me to be someone I'm not. Thank you for the same." He picked up Ethan, drove home, went through their nighttime routine. But as he sat on the couch later, apartment quiet, he thought about Victoria on that swing, talking about being terrified of permanent solitude, thought about his own fear of emotional absence. Maybe recognizing the problem was the first step toward fixing it. Or maybe he was just lonely enough to grasp at connection wherever he found it. Either way, Daniel was curious to find out. The following week arrived with the kind of bureaucratic chaos that made Daniel question every life choice that had led him to his current job. His company had been acquired by a larger firm 3 months prior, and the integration process felt designed to make everyone miserable. New systems, new protocols, new management strutting around like they'd personally invented efficiency. Thursday afternoon, Daniel sat in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and corporate desperation, listening to their new regional director outline the restructuring plan. The man, Bradley something, with expensive glasses and a tie that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly grocery budget, spoke in the kind of buzzwords that meant nothing and everything simultaneously. Synergistic integration, Bradley was saying, streamlined operational frameworks. We're looking at vertical optimization across all departments. Daniel's phone buzzed silently in his pocket. He ignored it, taking notes he'd never read again, nodding at appropriate intervals. Around the table, his coworkers did the same exhausted dance. "Now I know change can be challenging," Bradley continued, and Daniel resisted the urge to laugh. Challenging. Like this was some character-building exercise instead of a thinly veiled threat to everyone's job security. "But I want you to think of this as an opportunity. We're bringing in fresh perspectives, innovative leadership." The phone buzzed again. Daniel shifted in his seat. "To that end, I'd like to introduce our new Strategic Development Officer. She'll be overseeing the integration process, ensuring we maintain excellence while pursuing growth." The conference room door opened. Victoria Kane walked in. Daniel's brain short-circuited. He watched her enter with the confident stride of someone who belonged everywhere. Tailored navy suit, hair pulled back, every inch the powerful executive. She looked around the room with the assessing gaze of someone cataloging assets and liabilities. Their eyes met. Victoria's professional mask slipped for half a second. Surprise, maybe recognition, before sliding back into place. "This is Victoria Kane," Bradley said with the tone of someone introducing royalty. "Many of you probably recognize her name. She's agreed to consult on our integration, bring her expertise to help us navigate this transition." Daniel sat frozen as Victoria took a seat at the head of the table. She glanced at him once more, expression unreadable, then turned her attention to Bradley. "Thank you for the introduction," she said, voice crisp and professional. "I'm looking forward to working with all of you. This integration presents unique challenges, but also significant opportunities for growth and innovation." She launched into an overview of her approach, concrete, detailed, intelligent. Daniel tried to focus on her words instead of the surreal fact that the woman he'd been texting with about loneliness and vulnerability was now apparently his boss. Or boss adjacent. Or whatever the hell a strategic development officer was. The meeting dragged on for another 40 minutes. Victoria outlined timelines, expectations, review processes. She asked sharp questions that made it clear she'd already done extensive homework on the company. A few of Daniel's coworkers tried to impress her with jargon-heavy responses. She cut through the bullshit with surgical precision. "I'm not interested in what sounds good," she said at one point. "I'm interested in what works. If something isn't functioning, tell me. If you see problems, bring them forward. I can't fix what I don't know about." Daniel found himself taking actual notes this time. She was good at this, he realized. Not just competent, but genuinely skilled at cutting through corporate nonsense to reach useful information. Finally, Bradley wrapped up the meeting. People gathered their things, murmuring amongst themselves. Daniel moved toward the door with the herd, hoping to escape before things got weird. "Daniel Hayes?" He turned. Victoria was looking at him, professional expression firmly in place. "Could you stay for a moment? I'd like to discuss your department's integration timeline." Several coworkers glanced between them curiously before filing out. Bradley lingered, clearly wanting to be part of whatever important conversation was about to happen. "Actually, Bradley, if you could give us a few minutes," Victoria said smoothly. "I want to get a ground-level perspective before we discuss strategy." Bradley looked mildly put out, but nodded. "Of course. Daniel, make sure you give her full transparency on any challenges you're facing." Then they were alone. The door clicked shut. Silence filled the conference room. "So," Daniel said finally, "Strategic Development Officer." "So," Victoria echoed, "you work here." "I do. Have for 6 years." "This is incredibly weird. I was going to say complicated." Victoria sat back down, and the executive mask cracked enough to show something more human underneath. "I had no idea you worked for Northern Solutions. The acquisition happened so fast, and there are 300 employees. I didn't think to—" "It's fine," Daniel interrupted. "Neither of us could have known." "It's not fine. This is a conflict of interest. I'm consulting on integration, which means I have authority over performance reviews, restructuring decisions. If anyone found out we'd been—" She gestured vaguely. "Whatever we've been doing. Having coffee? It would look bad. For both of us, but especially for you." Daniel leaned against the wall. "So what do we do?" Victoria stood pacing to the window. Outside, the city sprawled in all directions, indifferent to their complications. "We should probably stop. The coffee thing, the texting, keep it professional until the integration is complete." "That could take months." "I know." "And then what? We go back to being strangers who once had a weird connection?" "I don't know, Daniel." She turned to face him, and he saw frustration there and something like sadness. "I don't have an answer, but I can't compromise my professional integrity, and I won't put you in a position where your job security depends on whatever this is between us." He knew she was right. Knew the smart thing was to agree, shake hands, maintain appropriate professional distance. They barely knew each other anyway. A few conversations, some texts, one evening walking through the city. It wasn't like they had some deep relationship worth risking careers over. But standing there looking at her, Daniel felt the loss of something he hadn't fully had yet. "Okay," he heard himself say. "Professional distance. Until the integration is done." Victoria nodded. "It's the right call." "Yeah." Neither of them moved. "For what it's worth," Victoria said quietly, "I was looking forward to our next coffee." "Me too. This job came up last minute. The firm I usually contract with needed someone immediately, and it's the kind of opportunity I don't turn down. I didn't think about how it might intersect with my personal life because I don't usually have one." "I get it. You don't have to explain." "I want to, though. I don't want you thinking I was being dishonest or playing some game." "I don't think that." The silence stretched between them, full of things neither could say. "I should go," Daniel said. "Ethan's school gets out in 20 minutes." "Of course. Go." He made it to the door before Victoria spoke again. "Daniel?" He turned. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing better than you give yourself credit for. With your son. The way you talk about him. That's not someone who's emotionally absent. That's someone who cares deeply and is trying to figure it out." The words hit harder than they should have. Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice, and left. The next 3 weeks were a special kind of torture. Victoria was around constantly. Meetings, department reviews, one-on-one sessions with various employees. Daniel watched her work with the grudging admiration of someone who recognized real competence. She cut through office politics, identified actual problems instead of scapegoats, and pushed for solutions that helped people instead of just padding metrics. His coworkers started calling her the ice queen behind her back. Too demanding, too direct, too unwilling to accept mediocrity. Daniel said nothing, watching them complain about the very qualities that made her effective. They maintained professional distance. When they had to interact in meetings, it was cordial and appropriate. Victoria asked him the same probing questions she asked everyone else. Daniel provided the same straightforward answers he'd have given any consultant. And every night he thought about texting her. Never did, but thought about it. One afternoon in mid-November, Victoria appeared at his desk. Daniel looked up from his spreadsheet, heart doing an unwelcome gymnastics routine. "Hayes," she said, formal, "do you have a few minutes to discuss your department's Q4 projections?" "Sure." He grabbed his laptop and followed her to a small conference room. She closed the door, turned to face him. The professional mask was still there, but wearing thin. "I hate this," Victoria said. "Which part?" "All of it. Pretending we're strangers, acting like we didn't have those conversations. Like I don't think about texting you every single day." Daniel set his laptop down carefully. "You do?" "Of course I do. Do you?" "Yeah." "This is ridiculous," Victoria said, but she didn't sound angry, just tired. "We're adults. We should be able to handle this professionally." "We are handling it professionally." "Are we?" "Because I gave your department a higher integration priority than it needed just so I'd have an excuse to be in more meetings with you. That's not professional. That's compromised judgment." Daniel hadn't known that. The knowledge settled somewhere warm and dangerous in his chest. "My department doesn't need higher priority?" "It's fine. Everything's fine. But it didn't need me personally reviewing your workflows." Victoria sat on the edge of the conference table. "I'm trying to be ethical here, trying to do the right thing, and I keep finding ways to be near you anyway. We could just admit this isn't working, the distance thing. And then what? We date while I have authority over your employment? That's worse." "Is it? I mean, you're a consultant, temporary authority. Once integration is done, you're gone anyway." "Exactly. I'm gone. Back to my life, you're back to yours. What's the point of starting something with an expiration date?" Daniel thought about that. Maybe the point is that we both want to, and we're making up reasons why we shouldn't instead of being honest about whether we want to try. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "I'm scared," she said finally, "of wanting this. Of it being another way I'm trying to fill a void instead of dealing with why the void exists. And I'm scared of being vulnerable with someone who could leave, because that's what I know, people leaving. So we're both terrified. Apparently," she smiled slightly, "we're doing great at this adulting thing. The best." Victoria stood, moving to the window. Outside, early winter had stripped the trees bare. The city looked stark and beautiful. "My contract is for 3 more months, minimum. Could be longer if complications arise." "Okay. I can't compromise my professional ethics. Won't put your job at risk. So we wait. Keep the distance. And when my contract is up, if we still want to try this, we do it then." It was the reasonable choice, the mature choice. Daniel hated it. 3 months. Maybe more. And in the meantime, we just pretend? We be professional, colleagues, nothing inappropriate. Define inappropriate. Victoria turned to look at him. Texting, coffee, conversations that aren't about work. Anything that could be perceived as favoritism or conflict of interest. That's going to suck. Yes, it is. She crossed to the door, hand on the handle. But it's right, and I'm trying to do things right for once, instead of just doing things that feel good in the moment. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to say that doing things right had gotten him nowhere except emotionally disconnected from his own son. That maybe sometimes the right thing was acknowledging you wanted something and pursuing it honestly. But he didn't. Because she was right about the professional complications, and because he respected her enough not to push when she'd drawn a clear line. 3 months, he said again. 3 months. She left. Daniel sat in the empty conference room, staring at his unopened laptop, feeling the weight of imposed patience. The holidays arrived with their usual chaos. Ethan's school had a winter concert where 7-year-olds murdered various seasonal songs with enthusiastic sincerity. Daniel sat in the audience, phone silenced, watching his son sing about snowflakes with the kind of concentration usually reserved for brain surgery. Afterward, in the parking lot, Ethan clutched the candy cane his teacher had distributed and chattered about the performance. "Did you see when Tommy forgot the words? He just stood there with his mouth open like a fish. It was so funny." "I saw that," Daniel said, unlocking the car. "You did great, though. Remembered all your words." "I practiced a lot. You weren't listening most of the time, but I practiced." The casual observation hit like a gut punch. Daniel stopped, hand on the car door. "You're right. I'm sorry." Ethan looked up at him, surprised. "It's okay. You were working." "It's not okay. You were practicing for something important, and I should have paid attention." His son shrugged, the gesture too adult for 7 years old. "You're busy. It's fine." They got in the car. Daniel started the engine but didn't shift into drive. "Bud, can I tell you something?" "Sure." I haven't been a very good dad lately. Maybe not for a while, and I want to do better. Ethan fiddled with his candy cane wrapper. You're not a bad dad. I'm not as good as I should be. I'm here, but I'm not really here. Does that make sense? I guess. Starting now, I'm going to try harder. Really listen when you talk. Do things with you instead of just being in the same room. Be the dad you deserve. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, in a small voice, can we build my Lego set when we get home? The big one? You always say you're too tired. Daniel thought about his evening plans. Email to catch up on, reports to review, the usual numbing routine. Yeah, he said, let's build your Lego set. Ethan's face lit up. Really? Really? They spent 3 hours on the floor that night, surrounded by tiny plastic bricks and incomprehensible instructions. Daniel's back ached. His knees protested. But Ethan talked the whole time about school, friends, the elaborate backstory he'd created for the Lego spaceship they were building. And Daniel listened, really listened. Dad? Yeah? This is fun. Such simple words. Daniel felt them settle somewhere deep. Yeah, bud, it is. Work became a minefield of wanting and restraint. Victoria was everywhere and nowhere, professional and distant, always appropriate. Daniel watched her in meetings, the way she commanded rooms without raising her voice, how she asked questions that made people think instead of just respond. He saw his coworkers underestimate her, then scramble to meet her actual standards. In early December, the company held a mandatory holiday party. Daniel showed up late, socialized minimally, and was planning his escape when he saw Victoria standing alone by the windows, looking out at the city lights. He should have stayed away, should have left, should have done anything except walk over to her. Not a party person? He said. Victoria glanced at him, expression careful. Not particularly. You? I'm here for the free food and contractual obligation. Honest. They stood in silence, watching the party unfold around them. Someone had made a terrible playlist. The office DJ apparently thought holiday cheer meant volume over quality. How's Ethan? Victoria asked quietly. Good. We built a Lego spaceship last week. Took 3 hours. That sounds nice. It was. I'm trying. To be more present. It's harder than I thought, breaking old patterns. But you're doing it. Some days. Other days I fall back into old habits. But I'm trying. Victoria nodded. That counts for something. How's the integration going? Ahead of schedule, actually. Your company is more functional than most. The restructuring should wrap up by late January instead of March. Late January. 6 weeks instead of 3 months. That's good, Daniel said. Yes, very efficient. Another silence. Around them, coworkers laughed too loud at mediocre jokes, fortified by spiked eggnog and forced festivity. I miss talking to you, Victoria said suddenly. The real talking, not this careful professional distance. Me too. 6 more weeks. Feels like forever. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Daniel saw everything she wasn't saying, saw his own frustration reflected back. We should move away from the windows, Victoria said. People are starting to notice we're talking. She was right. A few coworkers were glancing their way with that particular interest that meant gossip would follow. Yeah, okay. They separated, moving to opposite sides of the room. Daniel left shortly after, drove home, paid the babysitter, checked on sleeping Ethan, sat on his couch in the dark, thinking about 6 weeks and whether waiting was wisdom or cowardice. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is breaking my own rules, but I needed to say, tonight was hard. Talking to you and not really talking to you. I'm not good at patience. Daniel stared at the message, knew he should delete it, maintain the boundaries she'd set. Type back anyway. Me neither. But 6 weeks isn't forever. Feels like it. Yeah, it does. He deleted the thread immediately after, but the conversation stayed with him. Victoria was struggling with this too. That knowledge helped somehow, made the waiting feel less like punishment and more like something they were enduring together. Christmas came quietly. Daniel and Ethan spent it alone, their small tradition of pancakes for breakfast and a movie marathon unchanged by years. Ethan asked once why they didn't visit grandparents like his friends did. They're far away, Daniel said, which was technically true. His parents had retired to Florida, and visits were complicated by expense and old tensions. Ethan's maternal grandparents had never met their grandson, wanted nothing to do with the child their daughter had abandoned. "Do you think Mom will ever come back?" Ethan asked suddenly. Daniel paused the movie. "I don't know, bud. Maybe. Maybe not." "Do you want her to?" That was the question, wasn't it? Did he want his ex back? The woman who'd walked out without explanation, leaving him to raise a baby alone? "No," he said honestly. "I don't think I do, but I want you to have a mom. That's different. I have you." "You do. But everyone deserves two parents who love them." Ethan considered this. "Marcus has two moms, and Sarah has a stepmom who's nice, so it doesn't have to be the same mom who left, right?" Daniel looked at his son, surprised by the sophistication of the observation. "Right. It doesn't have to be her. So maybe you'll find someone. And then I'd have a mom. Maybe. Would you want that?" "I guess, if she was nice and liked dragons." Daniel laughed despite himself. "Those are good criteria." They went back to the movie, but Daniel's mind wandered. Ethan's casual acceptance of the possibility of someone new in their lives felt significant. Not permission exactly, but acknowledgement that their family didn't have to stay frozen in its current form. New Year's came. Daniel didn't make resolutions, but he thought about changes anyway. About the person he'd been a year ago versus who he was becoming. About whether waiting 6 weeks for Victoria meant something, or was just another way of avoiding present reality. January arrived with bitter cold and the relentless grind of post-holiday return to routine. The integration was indeed ahead of schedule. Victoria conducted final department reviews, compiled reports, made recommendations. Daniel saw her in passing, exchanged professional pleasantries, counted down days. 3 weeks left. Then 2. On a Friday afternoon in late January, Victoria called an all-hands meeting. The entire company crammed into the largest conference room, speculation running wild. Layoffs, people whispered. Restructuring meant people losing jobs. That's how these things always ended. Victoria stood at the front, flanked by Bradley and the other executives. She looked tired, Daniel noticed. The past months had worn on her. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I know there's been anxiety about what this integration means for your jobs. I want to address that directly." The room held its breath. "Based on my review, I'm recommending minimal personnel changes. Your company is strong, your processes are solid, and the issues I've identified are structural, not human. Fixing them doesn't require firing people. It requires supporting you better." The tension eased slightly. People shifted, cautiously hopeful. Victoria outlined her recommendations: new systems, better resource allocation, clearer communication channels, concrete changes that addressed actual problems instead of just cutting costs. Bradley looked mildly uncomfortable with the lack of dramatic restructuring, but nodded along. "My contract ends next Friday," Victoria concluded. "I've enjoyed working with all of you. You're talented people doing good work under challenging circumstances. I hope the changes we're implementing make that work easier." Scattered applause. Relief was palpable. People started filing out, chattering about the reprieve. Daniel stayed seated, watching Victoria gather her materials. She glanced up, caught his eye across the room, held his gaze for a moment before looking away. "Next Friday." 1 week. That evening, Daniel was attempting to help Ethan with math homework, fractions, the bane of second-grade existence, when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Daniel, it's Victoria. Is this a bad time?" His heart did something complicated. "No, it's fine. Ethan, keep working on that problem. I'll be right back." He stepped into the kitchen. Hey, I know I'm breaking the rules again, but my contract ends in a week, and I needed to ask something." "Okay. When it's over, when there's no professional conflict, do you still want to have that coffee? Actually try this thing?" Daniel looked through the doorway at his son, bent over homework with fierce concentration. Thought about the past months, the waiting, the wanting. The way talking to Victoria felt different than talking to anyone else. "Yes," he said. "I do." He heard her exhale. "Okay, good. I was worried maybe the time apart had changed things, made you realize this was a bad idea. Did it change things for you?" "No, the opposite, actually. Made me more certain." "Same." They were quiet for a moment. I'm nervous, Victoria admitted, about starting something real, something that isn't just conversations in crisis or texts in the dark. What if we don't work when things are normal? Then we don't work, but we won't know unless we try. Very rational. I have my moments. She laughed, and the sound made something in Daniel's chest unclench. 1 week, she said. 1 week. And Daniel, thank you for waiting, for being patient with all of this. Thank you for being worth waiting for. After they hung up, Daniel returned to the dining room. Ethan looked up from his fractions. Who was that? A friend. The lady from the cafe? Daniel had forgotten his son's memory for details. Yeah, her. Are you going to see her again? Maybe. Would that be okay? Ethan shrugged. If she's nice, does she like dragons? I don't know. I'll have to ask. That's important, Dad. Very important. I'll make sure to check. They went back to fractions, but Daniel's mind was already a week ahead, imagining coffee without professional complications, conversations without imposed restraint, imagining whether this thing between them could survive transition from theoretical to real. He had 7 days to find out. Victoria's last day at Northern Solutions fell on a Friday that felt unnaturally cold even for late January. Daniel watched her pack up the temporary office they'd given her, boxing files and disconnecting her laptop with the efficient movements of someone who'd done this 100 times. She caught him standing in the doorway and smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Lurking? She asked. Observing. There's a difference. Subtle one. She taped a box shut. You here for a reason, or just making sure I actually leave? Both. Daniel stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The office felt impersonal despite 3 months of occupancy. No photos, no personal items, nothing that marked it as Victoria's space. Your recommendations were good. People are actually optimistic about the changes. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. You're good at what you do. Victoria set down the tape dispenser, leaning against the desk. But? No but. That's the whole sentence. There's always a but with you. I've noticed that. You say something nice, then qualify it. Daniel thought about that. Maybe I'm not used to saying nice things without an escape route. That's depressing. Welcome to my psychology. She laughed, shaking her head. We're a mess, you know that? Been saying that for months. They looked at each other across the small office. The professional barrier that had defined their interactions for weeks felt thinner now, ready to dissolve the moment she walked out the door. But it was still there, and they both felt it. So, Victoria said, tomorrow. Tomorrow. Are you nervous? Terrified, actually. Good. Me too. She picked up another box, then set it down again. What if this was easier when it was impossible? What if the wanting was better than the having? Daniel had considered that possibility during every sleepless night of the past 3 months. Then we figure that out together, but we won't know standing here wondering. Very wise. I'm plagiarizing from a fortune cookie I read once. Victoria smiled, and this time it was genuine. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. That cafe where we first met? The one with terrible coffee? That's the one? Seems appropriate. Yeah, okay. Bradley appeared in the doorway, cutting through the moment with his usual oblivious timing. Victoria, there you are. We need to finalize the transition documents before you go. Of course. She glanced at Daniel. Hayes, thank you for your cooperation during the integration. Just doing my job. You did it well. They shook hands, professional and appropriate, while Bradley watched with the expression of someone mentally composing a LinkedIn post about successful corporate synergy. Daniel left them to their documents, returned to his desk, tried to focus on work. Failed completely. That evening, he picked up Ethan from school and drove to the grocery store, determined to cook an actual meal instead of defaulting to frozen pizza. Ethan sat in the cart, swinging his legs and narrating an elaborate story about a dragon who'd gotten lost in a supermarket. And then Crimson knocked over the whole cereal aisle, trying to turn around because he's really big, and supermarkets aren't made for dragons, Ethan was saying as Daniel grabbed vegetables he wasn't entirely sure how to prepare. Why was Crimson in the supermarket? He was looking for his friend, a little girl who got separated from her mom. He's a good dragon, remember? Right, the helpful kind. Exactly. Ethan grabbed a box of crackers off the shelf. Can we get these? Sure. Daniel tossed them in the cart, then stopped. Actually, Bud, I need to tell you something. Ethan looked up, suddenly wary. In his experience, I need to tell you something usually preceded bad news. It's not bad, Daniel said quickly. It's just, remember that lady from the cafe, the one who was sad? The one you've been texting. Daniel blinked. How do you know I've been texting her? You smile at your phone sometimes. You never used to do that. Ethan stated this as simple fact, no judgment. Plus, you asked me about dragons and if a lady liking them was important. You're too observant for 7. What about her? Daniel pushed the cart toward the produce section, buying time. I'm going to have coffee with her tomorrow, like a real coffee date, not just running into each other. And I wanted you to know because if things go well, you'll probably meet her eventually. Ethan considered this seriously. Is she your girlfriend? I don't know yet. Maybe. We're trying to figure that out. Does she know about me? She does? I've told her about you. Did you tell her about dragons? It came up. And? Daniel realized this was the actual test question. I didn't ask if she likes them specifically, but she listened when I talked about Crimson and your stories, seemed genuinely interested. Ethan nodded slowly. That's good. What's her name? Victoria. That's a fancy name. She's kind of a fancy person, but also not. It's complicated. Adults make everything complicated. You're not wrong. Daniel picked up tomatoes, pretending to know what to do with them. So you're okay with this? Me maybe dating someone? Ethan shrugged. I guess. As long as you don't get weird about it. Define weird. Like Marcus's dad when he started dating someone. He got all giggly and forgot to pick Marcus up from soccer twice. I promise not to forget to pick you up. And no giggling. I'll do my best. They finished shopping, Daniel purchasing ingredients with more optimism than skill. At home, he attempted to cook chicken and vegetables based on a recipe he'd found online. The result was edible if uninspired, but Ethan ate without complaint, and Daniel counted it as a win. Later, after Ethan was asleep, Daniel stood in front of his closet trying to decide what one wore to a coffee date that could potentially redefine one's entire emotional landscape. Everything looked wrong, too casual, too formal, too much like he was trying too hard or not trying at all. He settled on jeans and a sweater, then changed his mind 3 times. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Please tell me you're not overthinking what to wear. Daniel typed back, I have no idea what you're talking about. Liar. I've tried on 6 different outfits. Only 6? Amateur. What are we doing, Daniel? He stared at the message, understanding she wasn't asking about clothes anymore. Trying. That's all. Just trying. That's terrifying. Yeah, but the alternative is not trying, and I'm tired of that. Me too. They texted for another hour, conversation ranging from ridiculous to serious and back again. By the time Daniel finally put his phone down, some of the nervous energy had settled into something more manageable. Not calm exactly, but no longer paralyzing. He could do this. They could do this. Probably. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of bright winter sunshine that made everything look sharp and clear. Daniel woke early, made breakfast, tried not to watch the clock. Ethan seemed to sense his dad's nervous energy and mercifully didn't ask too many questions. At 1:30, Daniel started getting ready. At 1:45, he was dressed and pacing. At 1:50, Ethan looked up from his drawing. Dad, you're being weird. I know, sorry. It's just coffee. Right, just coffee. With a lady you really like. When did you get so perceptive? Ethan grinned. I'm 7.5. Basically a genius. Daniel laughed despite his nerves. He kissed the top of his son's head, confirmed that Linda would be there in 10 minutes to babysit, and headed out before he could talk himself into hiding in his apartment forever. The cafe looked exactly the same as it had that October morning months ago. Same worn tables, same smell of burnt coffee, same sense of being slightly outside time. Daniel arrived 5 minutes early and sat in their original corner booth, watching the door. Victoria walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. She wore jeans and a cream sweater, hair down around her shoulders, less polished than her corporate persona, but somehow more herself. She saw him and smiled, nervous and genuine. and Daniel felt something in his chest ease and tighten simultaneously. She crossed to the booth and slid in across from him. "Hi," she said. "Hi. This is weird, right? It's not just me?" "Incredibly weird." "Okay, good." Victoria set her bag down. "I thought about canceling 17 times." "Only 17? I rounded down." They ordered coffee, his black, hers with oat milk, the same as before, and sat in silence that felt different from the comfortable quiet of their previous meetings. This silence had weight, expectation. "So," Victoria said finally, "here we are. Here we are. No professional complications, no barriers, just two people having coffee." Just that. Why does that feel more terrifying than everything else? Daniel wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. Because before, we had excuses, crisis, circumstances, imposed distance. Now we're just choosing this, and choice means responsibility for what happens next. Victoria studied him. "You've thought about this?" "A lot. Probably too much." "I've been doing the same thing, overthinking until I talk myself out of it, then talking myself back in." She took a sip of her coffee, made a face. "This is still terrible." "The worst. Why do we keep coming here? Nostalgia, masochism? Probably both." She set her cup down. "Can I be honest about something?" "Please." "I'm scared that I'm doing this for the wrong reasons, that I'm still trying to fill a void with a relationship instead of dealing with why the void exists, that I'm going to mess this up because I don't know how to be with someone without trying to control everything." The admission hung between them, raw and vulnerable. "I'm scared too," Daniel said, "that I'm repeating patterns, looking for someone to complete my family instead of being a complete person myself. That I'll do to you what I've done to Ethan, be physically present but emotionally absent because I'm afraid of getting hurt. We're both disasters." "Yeah." "So what do we do?" Daniel considered. "We could acknowledge we're both disasters and try anyway. Be honest when we're scared, call each other out when we're falling into old patterns. Accept that this might not work, but it's worth trying to find out." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Outside, people walked past the cafe windows, wrapped in winter coats, living their own complicated lives. The world kept turning regardless of their small drama. "I had another rejection last week," she said quietly. "Fifth agency. I didn't tell you because we weren't supposed to be talking, but it happened. Same reasons as before, different phrasing. And I realized something sitting in that office, listening to them explain why I'm not suitable." "What?" "That I've been chasing motherhood like it's a prize to win instead of a relationship to build. That I've been so focused on being denied something that I never stopped to ask if I was pursuing it for the right reasons." She looked at him. "I want to be a mother. That's real. But I think I've also been using it as a measuring stick for my worth. Like if I could just achieve that, I'd finally be enough." "Are you?" Daniel asked. "Enough, I mean, without it." "I don't know. That's the problem. I've spent my whole life measuring worth by achievement, and motherhood feels like the ultimate achievement I can't have, which makes it both more painful and more suspect. What if it's not about achievement? What if it's just about wanting to love a kid and have them in your life? Is that what fatherhood is for you?" Daniel thought about Ethan, about the messy reality of parenting versus the idealized version. "Honestly, I didn't want it at first. It was forced on me when his mom left. And I spent years resenting it, going through motions, being angry that I didn't have a choice. But somewhere in there, beneath the resentment and fear, I started actually loving him. Not because he completed me or proved my worth, just because he's this weird, funny, dragon-obsessed kid who deserves to be loved. You're a better father than you think." "I'm trying to be. That's all I've got." Victoria reached across the table, fingertips brushing his hand. The touch was tentative, testing. "What if we're both trying to be better people and we help each other figure out how?" "That sounds nice." "It also sounds like a lot of pressure, making each other responsible for our growth." "You're right." Daniel turned his hand over, palm up. She laced her fingers through his. "So maybe we just agree to be honest about when we're scared, when we're falling into old patterns, when we need space or support. No fixing each other, just being present while we fix ourselves. I'm not good at asking for support. I'm not good at being vulnerable. So we'll both suck at this in different ways. Equally," She laughed, and the sound eased some of the tension. Okay, let's try. Actually try, with all the mess and fear and potential for failure. Okay. They sat like that, hands linked across the table, coffee growing cold. Around them, the cafe filled with its Saturday afternoon crowd, couples, students, people working on laptops. Normal life happening while they negotiated the terms of their attempt at connection. I should tell you something, Victoria said, about the adoption stuff. You don't have to. I want to. I've decided to stop, at least for now. Stop applying to agencies. Stop chasing it like a goal to achieve. I'm going to volunteer instead. At a children's center downtown. Work with kids who need support and mentorship without trying to own the outcome. How does that feel? Terrifying and liberating at the same time. Like I'm giving up and also finding something more real. She squeezed his hand. I realized I can have kids in my life without being a mother. And maybe that's enough for now. Maybe I need to learn how to just be with them before I try to parent them. That sounds healthy. It sounds like therapy, honestly. I've been going, since December, trying to untangle all the achievement-seeking and void-filling and figure out who I am under all of it. Daniel felt something like relief. That's good. Really good. Are you in therapy? No, should I be? Probably. We all should be. Fair point. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing between serious and light, past and present. Victoria told him about growing up with parents who measured love in accomplishments, about feeling like she was never quite enough no matter what she achieved. Daniel talked about his working-class background, the way leaving for college had felt like betraying his roots, how his ex-wife's abandonment had reinforced every fear he'd ever had about not being worth staying for. That's not true, you know, Victoria said. The not being worth it part. She left because of her own issues, not because you weren't enough. Intellectually, I know that. Emotionally, different story. Yeah, I get that. She checked her phone, surprised. It's almost 6. I've been here for 4 hours. Me too. I should probably go. Let you get back to Ethan. Probably. Daniel didn't move. Can I ask you something first? Sure. Do you want to do this again? Not just coffee, but actual dating. Dinner, movies, whatever people do when they're trying to figure out if they fit together. Victoria smiled. I do, but I need to be honest about something. Okay. I'm going to be bad at this. I'll overwork, prioritize projects over people, forget to text back. I'm going to have moments where I shut down emotionally because being vulnerable feels impossible, and I'll probably push you away when I get scared. And I'm going to have moments where I pull back, where I'm physically present but emotionally distant. I'll probably overthink everything and talk myself into believing you're going to leave eventually. And I'm going to prioritize Ethan, which means plans will change and dates will get rescheduled. So we're both going to be terrible at this. Absolutely terrible. Want to try anyway? Yeah, Daniel said. I really do. They left the cafe as evening settled over the city, streetlights flickering on, temperature dropping. On the sidewalk, Victoria turned to face him. Thank you, she said, for not walking away that morning in October, for seeing me when I was falling apart. Thank you for letting me. She kissed him then, soft and tentative, a question and answer at once. Daniel felt the fear and possibility of it, the weight of choice and uncertainty. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling. I'll text you, she said. You better. He watched her walk to her car, waved as she drove away, then headed to his own vehicle, feeling lighter than he had in months. The fear was still there, the fear of vulnerability, of failure, of history repeating itself. But it felt manageable now, shared. At home, Ethan was sprawled on the couch with Linda, watching a movie about dragons. He looked up when Daniel came in. How was coffee? Good, really good. Are you dating her? Yeah, I think so. Cool. Can she come over sometime? I want to meet her. Daniel's heart did something complicated. You do? Yeah, if you like her, she's probably okay, and I want to show her my drawings. I'll ask her. But Bud, we're taking this slow, okay? Getting to know each other. It might not work out. Ethan shrugged with the casual acceptance of childhood. That's okay. At least you're trying. After Linda left and Ethan was in bed, Daniel sat on his couch and texted Victoria. Ethan wants to meet you. No pressure, but the invitation is there when you're ready. Her response came quickly. That's terrifying and sweet. Can I think about it? Of course, take your time. We're figuring this out. Yes, we are. They settled into a rhythm over the following weeks, though calling it a rhythm made it sound smoother than reality. They had dinner twice a week when Victoria's schedule allowed, which sometimes meant last-minute cancellations when work exploded. Daniel tried not to read abandonment into the cancellations. Mostly succeeded. They talked on the phone late at night, conversations that ranged from mundane daily details to deeper questions about what they wanted from life. Victoria admitted she was struggling with the volunteer work at the Children's Center. Being around kids intensified her desire to be a parent, while also making her question whether she had the emotional capacity for it.
"There's this girl, Maya," Victoria said one night, voice tired. 8 years old, been in and out of foster homes her whole life. She doesn't trust adults, doesn't believe anyone will stick around. And I see myself in her, that wall she's built to protect herself. "What do you do?" Daniel asked. "I show up. Every week, consistent. Even when she ignores me or pushes back, I just keep showing up." "That's all you can do." "Is it enough?" "I don't know, but it's something."
3 weeks into their dating, Daniel invited Victoria for dinner at his apartment. Not fancy, just pasta and salad, but the significance was clear. She'd be in his space, meeting Ethan in their natural habitat. The stakes felt impossibly high. Ethan spent the afternoon cleaning his room without being asked, which was unprecedented and slightly concerning. "Bud, you know you don't have to impress her, right?" Daniel said, watching his son organize his dragon figurines by size.
"I know, but what if she doesn't like me?" The vulnerability in the question broke Daniel's heart. "She's going to like you. How could she not?" "What if I'm weird?" "You are weird. That's the best thing about you." Ethan looked up, uncertain whether this was a compliment. "Weird is good," Daniel clarified. "Weird is interesting. Normal is boring." "You really think so?" "I really think so."
Victoria arrived at 6 with a bottle of wine and visible nerves. Ethan answered the door, stared at her for a long moment, then announced, "You're pretty. Dad said you were pretty, but I didn't know if he was exaggerating because he likes you." Victoria blinked. "Thank you? That's very honest. Dad says honesty is important." "Your dad is right." She glanced at Daniel, who was trying not to laugh. "Hi." "Hi. Sorry about the interrogation." "I like interrogation. Gets everything out in the open." Dinner was chaotic in the way meals with 7-year-olds inevitably were. Ethan talked nonstop about dragons, his friend Marcus, the substitute teacher who let them have extra recess. Victoria listened with genuine attention, asking questions that showed she was actually interested. "Can I show you my drawings?" Ethan asked when they'd finished eating. "I'd love to see them." He dragged her to his room, returning with a portfolio of dragon illustrations. Victoria examined each one carefully, complimenting details, asking about the stories behind them. "This one is Crimson," Ethan explained, pointing to an elaborate red dragon. "He helps people who are lost. And this is Azure, who lives in the ocean and protects sailors. And this one—" "These are incredible," Victoria interrupted. "You're really talented." Ethan beamed. "Dad says that too, but he has to because he's my dad. You don't have to, so it counts more." "Ethan," Daniel warned. "What?" "It's true." Victoria laughed. "Fair point, but I mean it. These are good." After Ethan went to bed, later than usual because he kept finding excuses to come back out and talk to Victoria, they sat on Daniel's couch with wine, the apartment quiet around them. "He's wonderful," Victoria said. "Exactly like you described." "He liked you too. I could tell." "How?" "He showed you his drawings. That's his trust test." "I'm honored." She curled into the couch, looking more relaxed than Daniel had seen her. "This is nice. Being here, seeing where you live. How you are with him." "Yeah?" "Yeah, you're a good dad, Daniel. Better than you give yourself credit for." "I'm trying." "I can see that." "And he can too. The trying matters." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the city hummed with Saturday night energy. Inside, Daniel's small apartment felt like its own world, separate from everything else. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "Always." "Where do you see this going?" "Us, I mean." Daniel considered the question. "Honestly, I have no idea. I'm terrible at long-term planning in my personal life. I can project quarterly earnings, but ask me where I want to be in a year, and I draw a blank. Same. I can build 5-year business strategies, but my personal future is just question marks. So we're both making this up as we go. Apparently. She set her wine glass down. That should be more terrifying than it is. Why isn't it? Because you don't expect me to have answers. You're okay with the uncertainty. Are you okay with it? Victoria thought about it. I'm trying to be. My instinct is to plan everything, control outcomes, minimize risk. But relationships don't work that way, do they? Not that I've noticed. So we just... what? See what happens? We show up, keep being honest, pay attention to when we're falling into old patterns and call each other on it. The rest figures itself out, or it doesn't. That's very zen for someone who claims to be bad at this. I'm plagiarizing from my therapist. Victoria sat up. You're in therapy? Started last month. Figured if you were doing it, I probably should too. Turns out I have a lot of unresolved abandonment issues and fear of vulnerability. Who knew? Everyone who's ever met you? Fair. She kissed him then, longer and deeper than before, and Daniel felt himself falling into it, into her, into the terrifying possibility of this being real. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. But I want this. I want to try. Me too. They stayed like that, wrapped around each other on his worn couch, until Victoria's phone buzzed with a work emergency that couldn't wait. She left reluctantly, extracting herself from his arms with visible effort. I'll call you tomorrow, she promised. You better. After she left, Daniel cleaned up dinner, checked on sleeping Ethan, returned to the couch where he could still smell her perfume on the cushions. He felt the fear and hope warring in his chest, the old instinct to protect himself fighting against the desire to be open. But for the first time in years, hope was winning. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Thank you for tonight, for letting me in, for trusting me with Ethan. Thank you for showing up, always. The word sat on his screen, small, insignificant, always. A promise neither of them could guarantee but both wanted to believe in. Daniel fell asleep on the couch, phone in hand, thinking about maybes and possibilities, about small steps toward something uncertain but worth reaching for. The collapse happened on a Tuesday in late February, 3 weeks after Victoria had first come to dinner. Daniel should have seen it coming, should have recognized the signs, but he was too caught up in the momentum of things actually going well to notice the warning signals. Victoria had been distant for 4 days. Short texts, canceled plans, excuses about work that felt hollow even as she made them. Daniel told himself it was normal, that people got busy, that not everything was abandonment. His therapist would be proud of the rational self-talk. But on Tuesday evening, when Victoria canceled dinner for the 3rd time that week, with a message that read, "Something came up. Sorry." Daniel felt the old familiar anger rising, not the explosive kind, but the cold, calcified bitterness he'd built after Ethan's mother left. The voice that said this was always going to happen, that he was stupid to trust anyone, that being vulnerable was just setting himself up for pain. He didn't respond to her text, just stared at it, jaw tight, feeling every old wound reopen. Ethan looked up from his homework. Is Victoria coming over? No, she's busy. Again? Yeah. Is she still your girlfriend? The question, asked with 7-year-old directness, cut deeper than it should have. I don't know, bud. Did you have a fight? No, she's just busy with work. Ethan nodded, but Daniel saw the understanding in his son's eyes, the recognition that sometimes adults disappeared for reasons that had nothing to do with how much you mattered to them. The kid had learned that lesson early, and Daniel hated that he was reinforcing it now. That night, after Ethan was asleep, Daniel's phone rang. Victoria. He stared at her name on the screen, thumb hovering over the decline button, answered on the 5th ring. Hey, he said, voice flat. Hey, can we talk? Isn't that what we're doing? Silence. Then, you're angry. I'm not angry. Daniel, I can hear it in your voice. You're angry and you're shutting down. You canceled 3 times this week. What do you want from me? Enthusiasm? I want honesty. If you're upset, say you're upset. Don't do this thing where you pretend everything's fine while building walls. The observation was too accurate, too much like his therapist's recent feedback. It made him angrier. You want honesty? Fine. I'm tired of being the one who shows up while you pull disappearing acts. I'm tired of making excuses for you to Ethan. I'm tired of wondering if this time is the time you decide I'm not worth the effort. That's not what's happening. Then what is happening? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks a lot like someone finding reasons to run away. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was tight. I've been dealing with something hard. And instead of letting you in, I shut down. You're right about that. But it's not because you don't matter. It's because you matter too much, and that's terrifying. Daniel wanted to hold on to his anger, use it as armor against the fear underneath. But her words cracked something open. What are you dealing with? Can we talk in person? I don't want to do this over the phone. When? Now. I'm outside your building. Daniel walked to the window, phone still pressed to his ear. Victoria's car was parked on the street below, her silhouette visible in the driver's seat. Something about seeing her there, close but separated, made his chest tighten. Okay, he said. Come up. He met her at the door. She looked exhausted, hair pulled back messily, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie he'd never seen before. Not the polished executive or even the casual version of herself she usually presented. This was something raw, more unguarded. Linda's watching Ethan? She asked. He's asleep. It's almost 10. Right, sorry, I lost track of time. They stood in the doorway, neither moving to sit down. The apartment felt too small suddenly, the air too heavy. Talk to me, Daniel said. Victoria took a breath. Maya, the girl I told you about from the children's center, she asked me last week if I was going to be her mom. Just asked it, straight out, like it was a reasonable question, and I didn't know what to say. Daniel waited. I told her I was just a volunteer, that I came to help kids, but I wasn't anyone's mom. And she looked at me like I'd confirmed everything she already believed about adults. That we show up until it gets hard, then we leave. And I've been spiraling about it ever since. What does that have to do with us? Everything. Nothing. I don't know. Victoria finally moved, pacing to the window. I realized I've been doing to you exactly what I did to Maya. Showing up when it feels good. When I can be the version of myself I want to be, then disappearing when things get complicated or uncomfortable. So you're running away? No. Maybe. I don't know. She turned to face him. I'm terrified, Daniel, of caring about you and Ethan, of building something real and then destroying it because I don't know how to do this, of being the person who leaves because that's easier than staying through the hard parts. Daniel felt his anger deflating, leaving only the fear underneath. You think I'm not scared? I wake up every morning wondering if today's the day you realize you don't want this, that I'm not worth the complication. You are, though. That's the problem. You and Ethan, you're worth it, and I don't know if I'm capable of being what you need. What do you think we need? Victoria laughed, but it sounded broken. Someone consistent, emotionally available, someone who doesn't run away when things get real. That sounds like someone from a manual, not a person. I'm not looking for perfect, Victoria. I'm looking for someone who tries, who shows up even when it's hard, who's honest when they're struggling instead of disappearing. I wasn't being honest. I was hiding. Yeah, you were. Daniel crossed to her, closing the distance. And I was doing the same thing, building walls the second you pulled back, assuming the worst instead of asking what was wrong. We're both running, just in different directions. Victoria's eyes filled. I don't know how to stop. Neither do I. But maybe we figure it out together instead of separately. She was quiet for a long moment, tears spilling over. Daniel had only seen her cry once before, that first day in the cafe. Seeing it now felt different, not crisis, but honesty, the kind of vulnerability that came from choosing to be seen. I need to tell you something else, she said. Okay. I called the adoption agency. Asked them what it would take to be reconsidered, and they told me if I could demonstrate stable family support, a partner or support network, they'd review my application again. Daniel's stomach dropped. And you thought of me? Yes. No. Both. Victoria wiped her eyes. My first instinct was to see you as a solution. Partner equals family stability equals adoption approval. And I hated myself for it. Because you're not a solution, you're a person. And reducing our relationship to something that serves my agenda is exactly the kind of thing I swore I wouldn't do. But you thought about it.
I did. And then I spiraled, thinking maybe that's all this is for me, a means to an end, using you to get what I want.
Is it? Daniel asked, voice carefully neutral.
No.
The word came out fierce. No, it's not. I want you because you see me. Not the CEO or the successful version or the person who has everything figured out. You see the mess underneath and you don't run from it. That's not about adoption or motherhood or filling voids. That's about you. But the thought was there. Yes, and I should have told you instead of hiding from it, instead of pulling away because I was ashamed of my own thoughts. Daniel processed this, feeling the complexity of it settle into his chest. Part of him wanted to be angry at being seen as a solution, at the calculation underneath connection. But the larger part recognized the honesty it took to admit it, the vulnerability in confessing ugly thoughts instead of hiding them. My therapist asked me last week if I was dating you because I was ready for a relationship or because I was trying to fill the empty space my ex left, he said. And I didn't have a good answer, because maybe it's both. Maybe we can want someone for complicated reasons and still have the wanting be real. Victoria looked at him. What did you tell your therapist? That I didn't know. That I was trying to figure out the difference between wanting you because you make my life better and wanting you because I'm scared of being alone. And she said maybe those aren't mutually exclusive, that people contain multitudes and our reasons for wanting things are never pure. That's very philosophical. She charges $150 an hour. I'm getting my money's worth. Victoria laughed despite the tears. We're such a mess.
Yeah, we really are. Daniel reached for her hand. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the mess is part of it. Or maybe we're justifying dysfunction. Also possible. He squeezed her fingers. Here's what I know. I was angry when you pulled away. Angry because it confirmed every fear I have about being left. And instead of asking what was wrong, I shut down. Built walls. Prepared for you to be gone because that felt safer than being vulnerable. That's my pattern. That's what I do.
And I ran, Victoria said. Got scared of my own feelings and hid instead of dealing with them. That's my pattern. So we're both doing exactly what we said we'd do, falling into old patterns when things get hard. What do we do about it? Daniel thought about it. We notice. Call each other out. Agree that running and shutting down aren't options anymore. When you're scared, you tell me. When I'm building walls, you call me on it. We choose to stay even when staying is uncomfortable. That sounds exhausting. Probably. But the alternative is letting our patterns destroy something worth keeping. Victoria was quiet, looking at their joined hands. What if I can't do it? What if I keep running because it's too hard to stay? Then we deal with that when it happens. But you can't use fear of future failure as an excuse to give up now. When did you get so wise? $150 an hour, remember? She smiled, but it was fragile. I don't want to lose this. Lose you and Ethan, but I'm so afraid I will that I'm sabotaging it before it can happen naturally. Yeah, I do that too. Daniel pulled her closer. So let's both stop. Let's both agree that when things get hard, we talk about it instead of running or shutting down. Can we do that? I can try? That's all I'm asking. They stood there in his small living room, holding each other while the city hummed outside. Daniel felt the fear still present, the fear of being left, of not being enough, of history repeating. But underneath it was something else, something that felt like choice, like conscious decision to stay despite the fear. Victoria pulled back enough to look at him. I need to be honest about something else. Okay, if the adoption works out, if they reconsider me because I have partner support, that's going to change everything. A child in my life means less time, less flexibility, completely different priorities. And I don't know if you signed up for that. I signed up to see where this goes. If where this goes includes you becoming a mother, we figure it out then. That's very open-ended. Welcome to relationships. Everything's open-ended. I hate open-ended. I know, me too. She kissed him then, and it felt different from before. Less about passion and more about choosing each other in the midst of fear and complication. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her head against his chest. Thank you, she whispered, for not letting me run, for calling me back even when you were angry. Thank you for coming back, for being honest even when it was ugly. They moved to the couch, settling into each other. Victoria talked about Maya, about the children's center. about how being around kids intensified both her desire for motherhood and her fear of failing at it. Daniel talked about Ethan, about the progress they'd made and the ways he still fell short, about the constant tension between wanting to be better and falling into comfortable patterns of emotional distance. "He asked me today if you were still my girlfriend," Daniel said. "What did you tell him?" "That I didn't know," which was honest, but probably not what he needed to hear. What does he need to hear? Daniel thought about it. That adults don't have everything figured out. That relationships are complicated and sometimes people need space to deal with their own stuff. That you pulling away wasn't about him or us not being enough. Is that true? That it wasn't about you not being enough? Is it? Victoria was quiet for a moment. It was about me being afraid of how much you were becoming enough, of how much I was starting to need this. Need you. I've spent my whole life being self-sufficient, not needing anyone. And suddenly I was planning my week around seeing you, checking my phone constantly, feeling disappointed when you weren't available. That dependency terrified me. Needing people isn't weakness. Intellectually, I know that. Emotionally, different story. Yeah, I get that. They sat in silence, the weight of their confessions settling around them. Outside, a siren wailed past, then faded. Normal city sounds, normal life continuing regardless of their small dramas. "I should probably go," Victoria said, but didn't move. "Let you sleep. Or you could stay, not for anything, just to stay." She looked up at him. "Yeah?" "Yeah." They moved to his bedroom, the intimacy of it more vulnerable than physical. They lay facing each other in the dark, still clothed, just being close. "This is weird," Victoria whispered. "Good weird or bad weird?" "Just weird. I'm not used to being this close to someone without it being about sex or achievement or something transactional. We can be weird together." "Yeah, okay." She fell asleep first, breathing evening out, tension leaving her face. Daniel watched her in the dim light from the window, feeling the magnitude of what they were attempting. Not just a relationship, but a conscious dismantling of the protective mechanisms they'd both built over years. It felt impossibly hard and impossibly worth it simultaneously. He woke to find Victoria already up, sitting at the edge of the bed with her phone. Early morning light filtered through the curtains. "What time is it?" he mumbled. 6. "I have a meeting at 8. I should go." "Okay." She turned to look at him. "Last night was good. Hard, but good." "Yeah, it was." "I'm going to try harder, to not run when things get complicated, to tell you when I'm scared instead of disappearing. And I'm going to try harder to not build walls the second I feel threatened, to ask instead of assuming. We're very mature. The most mature." She kissed him, soft and brief. "I'll call you later?" "Please do." After she left, Daniel lay in bed listening to Ethan starting to stir in the next room. He thought about Victoria's confession, about being seen as a solution to the adoption problem. Part of him understood the agency's requirement. Stable family support made sense for a single-parent adoption. But another part wondered if he was being used, if their relationship would always carry that calculation underneath. His therapist's words came back to him. People contain multitudes. Reasons are never pure. Maybe that was okay. Maybe Victoria could want him for complicated reasons, and it could still be real. Maybe he could be dating her partly because he was lonely, and partly because she genuinely made his life better, and both could be true. The complexity was the point, not the problem. Over the next 2 weeks, they both made visible efforts. Victoria texted regularly, even when it was just to say she was thinking about him. She didn't cancel plans, or when work emergencies arose, she rescheduled immediately instead of leaving things vague. Daniel made conscious choices to stay open when his instinct was to retreat, to voice concerns instead of letting them fester into resentment. It was hard, harder than either expected. But it was working. Ethan warmed to Victoria more each time she came over. She started bringing materials for art projects, sitting on the floor with him while they drew dragons together. She didn't try to parent him or insert herself where she wasn't wanted. She just showed up, consistent and genuine, and let the relationship build naturally. "She's nice," Ethan told Daniel one evening after Victoria had left. "I like when she comes over." "Yeah? What do you like about her?" "She listens, like really listens, not adult listening where they're thinking about other stuff.
And she's good at drawing, and she doesn't treat me like I'm little. Those are good things to like about someone. Do you love her? The question caught Daniel off guard. I don't know yet. Maybe. I care about her a lot. That's kind of like love, right? It's the beginning of it, yeah. Ethan nodded, satisfied with this answer. Can you tell me if you decide you love her? So I'm not surprised. I'll tell you. Promise. In mid-March, Victoria invited them both to an event at the Children's Center, a showcase where the kids displayed art projects and performed short presentations for families and volunteers. Daniel could see she was nervous about them coming, about mixing the different parts of her life. The center was smaller than Daniel expected, a repurposed community building with bright murals and the controlled chaos of 20 kids hyped up on cookies. Victoria met them at the door, dressed casually but radiating tension. Thanks for coming, she said. It's probably going to be loud and overwhelming, so if you want to leave early, we'll be fine, Daniel interrupted. Right, bud? Ethan nodded, eyes wide, as he took in all the activity. They found seats near the back as kids cycled through presentations. Some read short stories they'd written, others showed artwork, a few performed songs. The quality ranged from adorable to chaotic, and the adults clapped enthusiastically for all of it. Then Maya took the stage. She was small for 8, with dark eyes that held too much wariness. She clutched a painting, knuckles white on the frame. "This is my family," she said, voice barely audible. "I painted everyone I wish was in my family." She turned the painting around. It showed 4 figures, a smaller one clearly meant to be Maya, and 3 adults of varying sizes. The details were rough but emotionally clear. "This is my foster mom, Diane," Maya said, pointing to one figure. "And this is Marcus, who volunteers and teaches me soccer. And this is Victoria, who comes every week and never forgets." Daniel watched Victoria's face as Maya spoke, saw her eyes fill, saw her press a hand to her mouth. "I wish they could all be my real family," Maya continued. "But they can't, so I painted them so I can remember they're real even if they're not mine." The audience was silent. Then someone started clapping, and it spread until everyone was applauding. Maya ducked her head, embarrassed but pleased, and ran back to her seat. Victoria excused herself, disappearing toward the bathrooms. Daniel waited a few minutes, then followed. He found her in the hallway, leaning against the wall, crying. "Hey," he said softly. "I can't do this," Victoria said. "I can't be what she needs. I'm just a volunteer who shows up once a week. I'm not her family. I can't be." "But you are, though. Maybe not legally, but you matter to her. You showing up consistently. That's family to a kid who hasn't had it. It's not enough. Maybe not, but it's something." Victoria wiped her eyes. "The adoption agency called yesterday. They want to do a home visit next month, review my application again with the new information about stable partnership." Daniel's heart skipped. "That's good, right? I don't know. Maybe. But watching Maya up there, seeing how she thinks of me as family when I'm barely in her life, it made me realize I have no idea what I'm doing. How can I be someone's mother when I'm terrified of being someone's volunteer? You think being terrified means you shouldn't do it? Doesn't it? I was terrified when Ethan was born. Terrified when his mom left. Terrified every day for years that I was destroying him by being a terrible father. Terror doesn't disqualify you. It just means you care about getting it right." Victoria looked at him. "What if I use you? What if I stay with you because it helps my adoption chances and that poisons everything?" "Is that why you're staying?" "No, but the thought is there, always there, like static underneath everything real." Daniel took her hands. "Here's what I think. I think you can want me and want motherhood, and those things can be connected without one invalidating the other. I think you can be strategic about building a life while still being genuine about the people in it. And I think the fact that you're worried about using me means you're not actually using me." "That's very generous." "It's honest, which is what we agreed to do." They stood in the hallway while the showcase continued in the next room. Through the walls, they could hear another kid presenting, parents clapping, the normal chaos of community and connection. "I'm falling in love with you," Victoria said suddenly. "And it terrifies me because I don't know if I'm capable of sustaining it, of being what you and Ethan need long term." Daniel felt the words settle into his chest, warm and frightening. "I'm falling in love with you too, and I'm terrified for the same reasons.
But being terrified together seems better than being safe and alone. Does it? I think so. Ask me again in 6 months. She laughed, and it broke the tension. Okay, I will. They returned to the showcase, sitting on either side of Ethan. Victoria reached across him to take Daniel's hand, and Ethan looked up at their linked fingers with a small smile. After the event ended, Maya approached them shyly. She looked at Victoria, then at Daniel and Ethan. Is this your family? She asked Victoria. Victoria hesitated. Daniel could see her weighing honesty against kindness, reality against hope. These are my friends, she said finally. Very important friends. Daniel and his son Ethan. Maya studied them. Do you wish they were your family, like I wish you were mine? The question cut to the heart of everything. Victoria crouched down to Maya's level. Sometimes family is people who choose each other, she said. Not because they have to, but because they want to. And yes, I'm choosing them, every day. Maya seemed to accept this. She showed Ethan her painting, and they started talking about whether dragons counted as family if you imagined them hard enough. The adults drifted to the side. That was good, Daniel said quietly. What you told her. Was it true? Is it? Victoria watched Ethan and Maya debating dragon family structures with complete seriousness. Yeah, she said, I think it is. I think... They left the center as evening settled over the city. Ethan fell asleep in the car on the way home, exhausted from overstimulation and sugar. Daniel carried him upstairs while Victoria followed, the domesticity of it feeling both natural and momentous. After Ethan was in bed, they sat on the couch in the quiet apartment. The home visit is in 3 weeks, Victoria said. They want to see my living situation, meet my support network, assess stability. Do you want me there? Would you? I know it's a lot to ask, being part of something official like that. Victoria, do you want me there? She looked at him. Yes, I want you there. Then I'll be there. It doesn't feel like using you. It feels like building a life together. Those are different things. She kissed him, and it felt like gratitude and relief and fear all mixed together. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I love you, she whispered. I'm terrified, and I don't know if I can do this right, but I love you. I love you too, Daniel said, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. They sat like that in the dark apartment, holding each other, two people choosing to stay despite every instinct screaming at them to run. Outside, the city continued its endless motion, indifferent to their small courage. But in that moment, their small courage felt like enough. The morning of the home visit, Victoria called Daniel at 6 a.m, voice tight with panic. I can't do this, she said without preamble. I've been up all night and I can't do this. Daniel, still groggy, sat up in bed. What happened? Nothing happened. Everything's fine. The apartment's clean. I have all my documents ready. I know what I'm going to say. But I woke up at 3 realizing that I'm about to ask strangers to trust me with a child's life when I can barely trust myself. Victoria, what if they see through me? What if they realize I'm just faking competence, that I have no idea what I'm doing? Nobody knows what they're doing. That's the secret. We're all just faking it and hoping we don't screw up too badly. That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be reassuring. It's supposed to be honest. Daniel got out of bed, padding to the kitchen to start coffee. You want me to come over early? We can talk through it. You have to get Ethan to school. Linda can do it. I'll be there in an hour. Victoria was quiet for a moment. You don't have to fix this. I'm not trying to fix it. I'm trying to be there while you deal with it. That's different. Okay, yeah. Come over. He found her apartment in controlled chaos. Everything technically perfect, but radiating anxiety. Victoria had changed clothes 3 times, evidenced by the discarded outfits on her bed. She was wearing dark jeans and a cream sweater, somehow managing to look both put together and approachable. Too casual? She asked when she saw him. I don't want to look like I'm trying too hard, but I also don't want to look like I don't care. You look fine. You look like yourself. That's what I'm afraid of. Daniel took her hands. They're not looking for perfection. They're looking for stability, honesty, capacity to care for a child. You have all of those things. Do I? How do you know? Because I've watched you with Maya, with Ethan. You're not perfect, but you show up. You're consistent. You care deeply even when it scares you. That's what matters. Victoria pulled away, pacing to the window. Her apartment overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view that probably cost more than Daniel made in a year. It was beautiful and sterile, the kind of space that looked like it belonged in a magazine rather than to an actual person.
"I'm not sure I should do this," she said quietly. "The adoption? Any of it. The adoption, us trying to build something when I'm clearly not capable of it." She turned to face him. "What if I'm fooling myself? What if I'm chasing motherhood because it's the one thing I've been denied, and I'm dragging you and Ethan into it?" "Are you?" "I don't know. How do you know the difference between wanting something for real and wanting it because you can't have it?" Daniel thought about his own journey with fatherhood, the resentment that had slowly transformed into something real. "I think you trust the process. You show up, you do the work, and you pay attention to how it feels. Does being with Maya feel like proving something, or does it feel like connection?" "Both. Always both." "Then maybe that's okay. Maybe we contain multitudes and our motivations are never pure and we do it anyway." Victoria smiled slightly. "You keep saying that because it keeps being true." The social worker arrived at 10, a woman named Patricia, mid-50s, with the professional warmth of someone who'd seen it all and maintained compassion anyway. She shook Victoria's hand, then Daniel's, taking in the apartment with assessing eyes. "Thank you both for meeting with me," Patricia said, settling into the living room. "I know these visits can feel invasive, but I promise I'm here to help facilitate, not to judge." Victoria nodded, perched on the edge of the couch with rigid posture. Daniel sat beside her, close enough to be supportive without being presumptuous. Patricia asked questions about Victoria's work schedule, her support network, her understanding of the challenges of single parenthood. Victoria answered carefully, honestly, and Daniel watched her navigate the tension between presenting herself well and being genuine. "And you, Daniel," Patricia said, turning to him. "How long have you and Victoria been together?" "About 4 months, officially." "And you're comfortable with the possibility of Victoria adopting a child? The impact that would have on your relationship?" Daniel glanced at Victoria, saw the fear in her eyes that he'd say the wrong thing. "I'm comfortable with being supportive of what Victoria wants. Whether that's adoption or anything else, we're building something together, and that means supporting each other's goals." That's very diplomatic. It's honest. I won't pretend I know exactly what it would look like if she adopts, but we're committed to figuring it out together. Patricia made notes. "Victoria, I've read your previous applications. The concerns raised were primarily about support network and lifestyle stability. Can you speak to how those have changed?" Victoria took a breath. "I've made changes in my work schedule. I'm taking fewer consulting contracts, focusing on projects that don't require constant travel. I've built relationships with people who are invested in my life beyond professional capacity. And I've spent the past 6 months volunteering at the Children's Center, learning what it actually means to show up for kids consistently." "Tell me about that." "The volunteering. It's been hard," Victoria said, and Daniel felt a flash of pride at her honesty. "There's a girl, Maya, who's become important to me. She's in foster care, been through multiple homes, doesn't trust adults. And every week I show up and she tests whether I'm going to leave. And I haven't, and slowly she's starting to believe I might stay." "How does that make you feel?" "Terrified, because what if I do leave? What if I can't sustain it? What if I'm setting her up for another disappointment? But you keep showing up anyway." "Yes." "Why?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Because she deserves someone who stays. And because learning to be that person for her is teaching me I might be capable of being it for my own child." Patricia nodded, making more notes. She asked about Victoria's childhood, her relationships with her own parents, her understanding of attachment and trauma. The questions were probing without being cruel, designed to assess psychological readiness. Then she turned to Daniel again. "And you have a son, Ethan, correct?" "Yes, he's 7. How does he feel about Victoria?" "He likes her. They draw dragons together. She listens to him in a way that makes him feel seen." "And how would he feel about potentially having a sibling if Victoria's adoption goes through?" Daniel hadn't actually asked Ethan that directly. "I think he'd be open to it. He's asked before why he doesn't have siblings like his friends. But I'd want to have real conversations with him about it, not just assume." "That's good awareness." Patricia looked between them. "I'm going to be direct.
The agency's previous concerns about Victoria were legitimate. Success and wealth don't automatically translate to parenting capacity. But what I'm hearing today suggests genuine growth and self-awareness. The question becomes whether that growth is sustainable. How do you measure that? Victoria asked. Time, mostly. Consistency over months and years, not weeks. Which is why I'm recommending a provisional approval. You'd be cleared for adoption, but with a longer monitoring period. Check-ins every other month for the first year. Assessment of how you're actually managing parenthood versus how you think you'll manage it. Victoria's eyes widened. Provisional approval. It means we're willing to move forward, with oversight, with support, but forward. Daniel watched emotions wash across Victoria's face. Relief, fear, disbelief, hope. She looked at him, and he saw the question there. Was this real? Was this actually happening? Could she let herself believe it? He took her hand. It's real, he said quietly. After Patricia left, Victoria stood at the window in silence for a long time. Daniel waited, letting her process. I don't know if I can do this, she said finally. You keep saying that, because I keep meaning it. She turned to face him. What if I adopt a child and I'm terrible at it? What if I damage them the way my parents damaged me? What if my need to achieve turns them into another trophy? What if you don't? What if you're good at it? What if you learn and grow and become exactly what they need? That seems statistically unlikely. Based on what data? Victoria laughed despite herself. You're very annoying when you're being supportive. It's a gift. She crossed to him, settling into his arms. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. But I want this. I want to try. I know that too. They stood like that while the city sprawled below them, two people on the edge of transformation, terrified and hopeful in equal measure. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and preparation. Victoria worked with a family counselor to prepare for placement, took parenting classes, converted her guest room into a child's bedroom. Daniel helped where he could, offering perspective from his own stumbling journey into fatherhood. Don't buy too much, he advised when Victoria showed him her online shopping cart full of toys and books. Kids are unpredictable. You won't know what they like until they're there. But what if they arrive and there's nothing for them? What if they feel unwanted? They won't feel unwanted because you have the right toys. They'll feel wanted because you show up and stay. Victoria deleted half the cart, then added it back, then deleted it again. I don't know how to do this without over-preparing. You learn, badly, with lots of mistakes, but you learn. In early May, Victoria got the call. A girl, 6 years old, needed placement. Her name was Sophie. She'd been in the system for 2 years, and she needed someone stable who could handle behavioral challenges and trust issues. They think I can handle it, Victoria said, phone pressed to her ear, voice shaking. They want to do a meet and greet next week. That's amazing. That's terrifying. Both. It's both. The night before the meet and greet, Victoria appeared at Daniel's apartment without warning. She looked exhausted, barely holding it together. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay. If this works, if Sophie comes to live with me, everything changes. My time, my energy, my capacity for this. She gestured between them. I won't be able to be the girlfriend who has spontaneous dinners or weekend trips. I'll be someone's mother first. And I need to know if you can handle that. Daniel had known this conversation was coming, had thought about it during sleepless nights, turned it over in therapy, examined his own capacity for being secondary to a child who wasn't his. Here's what I know, he said. I fell in love with you because of who you are, not because of what you could give me. If who you are includes being Sophie's mother, then I love that too. Will it be hard sometimes? Probably. Will I feel neglected or frustrated? Maybe. But I'd rather have those problems with you than no problems without you. Victoria's eyes filled. That's possibly the most honest thing anyone's ever said to me. I'm getting better at honesty. What about Ethan? This affects him too. It does. And I'll talk to him about it. But I think he'll be okay. He understands what it's like to need someone to stay. The meet and greet happened at the agency office, neutral territory designed to be comfortable without being overwhelming. Daniel didn't go. This was Victoria's moment, but she texted him updates. She's tiny. 6 but looks 4. Won't make eye contact. Social worker says she's been through 3 placements.
doesn't trust adults. I have no idea what I'm doing. She just asked if I have dragons. Ethan would be proud. That evening, Victoria came over looking shell-shocked. She collapsed on Daniel's couch, staring at nothing. She didn't talk much, Victoria said, answered questions in 1 or 2 words, kept watching the door like she was planning escape routes. That makes sense. She's protecting herself. I told her about the children's center, about Maya and the other kids. She asked if they'd be her siblings, and I said they'd be her friends, and she looked so disappointed. Victoria covered her face with her hands. I'm going to fail her. I'm going to be another adult who can't give her what she needs. Or you're going to be the one who stays. You don't know yet. How did you do it? When Ethan's mom left and you had no idea what you were doing? Daniel thought back to those early days, the terror and resentment and confusion. I did it badly, honestly. I went through motions for years before I figured out what being present actually meant. You're already ahead of where I was. I don't feel ahead. That's because you're aware of what you don't know. I wasn't even conscious enough to recognize my own failings. Victoria lowered her hands. She's supposed to move in next week. 1 week to get ready for my life to completely change. Are you ready? No, absolutely not, but I'm doing it anyway. The week passed in frantic preparation. Victoria took a leave of absence from work, set up the bedroom with help from Daniel and Ethan, met with Sophie twice more to build familiarity. Each meeting went slightly better than the last, Sophie's walls lowering incrementally. On moving day, Daniel kept Ethan occupied at home, while Victoria went to pick up Sophie from her foster placement. He got texts throughout the morning. She packed everything in one bag. Everything she owns fits in one bag. She won't let go of a stuffed rabbit. It's falling apart, but she won't put it down. We're going to the apartment. I'm terrified. She just walked in and asked which room is hers. No emotion, just matter of fact. What if I can't do this? Daniel typed back. You're already doing it, 1 moment at a time. That evening, Victoria called. She sounded exhausted. She's asleep, Victoria said. Fell asleep holding that rabbit still in her clothes. I tried to help her change into pajamas, but she flinched when I reached for her, so I just put a blanket over her and left. That's okay. You did the right thing. Did I? Should I have tried harder? Should I have... Victoria, stop. You respected her boundaries. That's exactly right. She was quiet for a moment. I sat and watched her sleep for an hour. Just sat there watching this tiny person who's been through hell, and I thought about all the ways I could fail her, all the ways my own damage could damage her more. And I'm doing it anyway, because someone has to stay. Someone has to be the one who doesn't leave. Yeah, someone does. They talked for another hour, Victoria processing the enormity of what she'd taken on. When they finally hung up, Daniel sat in his dark living room thinking about transformation, about how quickly lives could change, about the courage it took to choose responsibility over safety. The first month was brutal. Sophie tested every boundary, pushed every limit, waited for Victoria to prove she was like all the other adults who'd given up. Victoria called Daniel crying more than once, certain she'd made a terrible mistake, that she wasn't equipped for this. She threw a plate at the wall today, Victoria said one night, voice raw. Just picked it up and threw it, and I stood there frozen, no idea what to do. I read all the parenting books, but none of them covered what to do when a 6-year-old is hurling dishes. What did you do? I cleaned it up, asked if she was hurt, told her I understood she was angry, but we don't throw things. And she just looked at me like I was an idiot. That sounds right, actually. Does it? You stayed calm, you set a boundary, you checked if she was okay. That's more than a lot of parents would do. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. Nobody ever feels like they're doing enough. That's the curse of caring. Slowly, incrementally, things improved. Sophie started talking more, testing whether Victoria meant what she said about staying. She asked questions about Maya, about the other kids at the center. She let Victoria help her with homework without flinching. One evening in June, Daniel brought Ethan over for dinner. The kids circled each other warily at first, both uncertain of this new dynamic. Do you like dragons? Ethan asked finally. Sophie shrugged. I guess. I draw them. Want to see? They disappeared to Sophie's room, leaving the adults in the kitchen. Victoria looked nervous. This is weird, right? She said. All of us together like some makeshift family? Incredibly weird, Daniel agreed, but also kind of nice. They could hear the kids talking in the other room, Ethan's voice enthusiastic as he explained dragon anatomy.
Sophie's responses were quieter, but present. "She's been asking about you," Victoria said. "About whether you're my boyfriend, about Ethan, about whether we're all going to live together." "What did you tell her?" "That relationships are complicated, that we're figuring it out as we go, that nothing's certain, but I care about you and want you in our lives." "How'd she take it?" "Asked if that meant you might leave. Because that's her framework. Everyone leaves eventually." Daniel thought about his own child, about the lessons they absorbed from adult behavior. "What did you say?" "That I couldn't promise what you'd do, but I could promise what I'd do. That I'm staying, that whatever happens with us, I'm staying with her." "That's good." "Is it enough?" "I don't know, but it's honest." They ate dinner together, the four of them around Victoria's dining table, the conversation stilted but trying. Sophie watched everything with cautious eyes, cataloging details, building her assessment of whether this was safe. After dinner, while the kids drew in Sophie's room, Victoria and Daniel stood at the window watching the city lights. "I need to tell you something," Victoria said. "Okay." "I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. The adoption, Sophie, all of it, it's changing me, and I don't know if the person I'm becoming is someone you signed up for." Daniel turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm less available, less flexible, less able to prioritize our relationship the way I did before. I have to put Sophie first, always. And that means you'll be second sometimes, maybe often." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" "I'm okay with you becoming who you need to be, even if it's different from who you were." Victoria's eyes filled. "I love you. I need you to know that. Even when I'm distracted or tired or not giving you enough attention, I love you." "I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere." "How can you know that?" "Because I'm choosing it. Every day I'm choosing to stay. That's all any of us can do." In July, the agency did their 2-month check-in. Patricia came to the apartment, observed Victoria with Sophie, asked probing questions about adjustment and challenges. "It's clear you're struggling," Patricia said bluntly, "but it's also clear you're committed. How are you managing the stress?" "Therapy twice a week," Victoria said. "Support groups for adoptive parents, help from friends, and a lot of crying in the shower when Sophie's asleep. That's normal. Good even. You're not pretending it's easy." "It's the hardest thing I've ever done." "Harder than building a business empire?" Victoria laughed. "So much harder. With business, I could control outcomes. With Sophie, I can only show up and hope it's enough." Patricia made notes. "And your relationship? How is that being affected?" Victoria glanced at Daniel, who'd been quietly present during the interview. "We're figuring it out. It's complicated, but we're trying." "Complicated how?" "We don't live together. He has his own child. I'm navigating single parenthood while also trying to maintain a relationship. Sometimes those things conflict." "Are you considering combining households?" The question hung in the air. Daniel and Victoria hadn't discussed it explicitly, though it had been implied in various conversations. "We've talked about it," Daniel said carefully, "but we're taking it slow, making sure we're doing it for the right reasons." "Which would be?" "Wanting to build a life together, not just solving logistical problems or creating the appearance of stability." Patricia nodded. "That's mature. A lot of couples rush into cohabitation for practical reasons and end up resenting it." After Patricia left, Victoria collapsed on the couch. "She's right. We're avoiding the conversation about living together. Are we avoiding it or being smart about timing? I don't know. Maybe both." Victoria looked at him. "Do you want to live together?" "Eventually, yeah, but not right now. Not while you're still figuring out life with Sophie and I'm still working on being actually present for Ethan. We both have work to do separately before we can do it together." "That's very rational." "I have my moments." "What if eventually never comes? What if we stay in this holding pattern forever?" "Then we stay in it, but I don't think we will." In August, 6 months after Sophie moved in, something shifted. The moment was small. Sophie reached for Victoria's hand while crossing the street, but the significance was enormous. She'd never initiated physical contact before. Victoria texted Daniel immediately. "She held my hand. Just reached up and took it like it was normal." "That's huge." I cried in the middle of the crosswalk. "People probably thought I was insane. You kind of are." "Fair." That evening, when Daniel came over for dinner, Sophie was more talkative than usual. She showed him a picture she'd drawn at school, explaining the details without prompting. When Ethan arrived with Linda, Sophie actually seemed happy to see him. The kids disappeared to play, and Daniel found Victoria in the kitchen, staring at nothing. "You okay?" he asked. "She called me Mom today. Not Victoria. Mom, it was casual, like she didn't even think about it. Asked me to sign a permission slip and said, 'Mom, can you sign this?' And then just kept talking like nothing happened." Daniel pulled her into his arms. "How do you feel?" "Terrified. Honored. Completely overwhelmed. Like maybe I'm actually doing this. Actually being someone's mother." "You are. You've been doing it for months." But hearing her say it made it real in a way it wasn't before. They stood in the kitchen, wrapped around each other, while kids' laughter drifted from the other room. Normal sounds, normal life, the kind of ordinary they'd both been afraid to hope for. "I want to try," Victoria said quietly. "Living together. Not right now, but soon. When we're both ready." "Yeah?" "Yeah. I want to build something real with you. Not perfect, not easy, but real." "Me too." They started having conversations about logistics, about what combining households would look like. Sophie's school district, Ethan's routine, whose apartment made more sense. The practicalities were complicated but manageable. In September, on a Saturday morning, Daniel and Victoria took both kids to the cafe where they'd first met. It was Victoria's idea, a full-circle moment, she said, though Daniel suspected she was just being sentimental. They sat in their original booth, the one where Daniel had first approached Victoria while she cried. The kids colored on napkins while the adults drank terrible coffee. "Why are we here?" Ethan asked. "This coffee is really bad." "It's where your dad and I met," Victoria said. "You met in a cafe?" "Your dad saw me crying and came over to check on me." Sophie looked up from her coloring. "Why were you crying?" Victoria glanced at Daniel, who nodded permission. "Because I wanted to be someone's mom, and people kept telling me I couldn't, that I wasn't good enough." "That's mean," Sophie said. "Yeah, it was, but it turns out they were wrong." Sophie considered this. "My first foster mom said I was too difficult, that nobody would want to keep me." The casual way she said it broke Daniel's heart. Victoria's hand tightened on her coffee cup. "She was wrong too," Victoria said firmly. "You're not difficult. You're a kid who's been through hard things and deserves someone who stays. And I'm staying." "Promise?" "Promise." Sophie went back to coloring, but something had shifted in her posture. Some small release of tension, some incremental building of trust. Ethan looked at his dad. "Is this going to be our family? All of us?" The question was so direct, so innocent, so enormous. Daniel looked at Victoria, saw his own uncertainty reflected back. "We're trying to be," Daniel said carefully. "We're all learning how to be family together. It's messy and complicated, but we're trying." "Okay," Ethan said, satisfied with this answer. "Can I have hot chocolate?" They stayed at the cafe for hours, letting the kids make a mess with art supplies while the adults talked about futures and possibilities. At some point, Sophie climbed into Victoria's lap, and Ethan leaned against Daniel's shoulder, and they sat like that. Two adults, two kids, something that looked remarkably like family. Walking back to the car, Sophie between them holding both their hands, Victoria looked at Daniel over the top of her head. "Thank you," she mouthed. "For what?" he mouthed back. "For not walking away that day." "Thank you for letting me stay." That night, after the kids were asleep, Daniel and Victoria sat on her couch talking about the future for real. Not in hypotheticals or maybes, but in concrete plans. "I want to find a house," Victoria said. "Not an apartment, a real house with a yard where the kids can play. Space for all of us." "That's a big step." "I know, but I'm tired of halfway measures. I want to build something permanent." "What about the adoption monitoring? Patricia's still doing check-ins." "She is, and she'll have opinions about us moving in together. But I think she'll see it as stability, not instability. 2 parents instead of 1. Daniel thought about it, about giving up his apartment, the independence he'd fought so hard to maintain, about trusting someone enough to intertwine their lives completely, about being vulnerable to loss all over again. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." "Yeah? Yeah, let's build something permanent." They found a house in October, small, manageable, with a yard and enough bedrooms for everyone to have their own space. The move happened over 2 chaotic weekends, Daniel and Victoria's belongings mixing together, creating something new from their separate lives. Sophie and Ethan adjusted better than expected, excited about having a sibling-adjacent person to play with. They fought sometimes, normal kid stuff, but mostly they got along. Patricia came for her 6-month review in November. She walked through the house, observed the family dynamics, asked her probing questions. "This is different from what I expected," she said to Victoria privately. "Good different or bad different?" "Just different. When you first applied for adoption, you were a single woman with unlimited resources and no support network. Now you're part of a blended family with all the complications that entails. Is that a problem?" "Quite the opposite. Sophie needs exactly this: messy, real, complicated family. Not a perfect situation, but a committed one." Patricia made notes in her file. "I'm recommending we complete the monitoring period early. You've demonstrated sustained commitment and growth. The adoption can be finalized." Victoria's eyes filled. "Really? Really? You've done the work. You've become exactly what Sophie needs." That evening, Victoria told Sophie the news. The girl looked up from her homework, processing. "What does finalized mean?" Sophie asked. "It means you're mine, forever. Legally and officially, and in every way that matters. Nobody can take you away, and I can't change my mind. You're my daughter." Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Can I still call you Victoria? Mom feels weird sometimes." "You can call me whatever makes you comfortable." "Okay. Can you help me with this math problem? It's stupid and I don't get it." "Sure, baby. Let's look at it together." The casual domesticity of it, adoption finalization reduced to a footnote before homework help, felt exactly right. Not a dramatic moment, but a quiet integration into normal life. In December, almost a year after that first coffee date, Daniel and Victoria sat on their back porch while the kids played inside. Winter had settled in, the yard brown and dormant, waiting for spring. "We did it," Victoria said quietly. "Did what?" "Built something real. Despite being terrified and damaged and convinced we'd fail. We're still terrified and damaged. True, but we're doing it anyway. But Daniel thought about the journey, from 2 lonely people in a cafe to this, a house full of noise and mess and family. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "That day in October when I walked over to you, I wasn't trying to save you or fix you or be some hero. I was just tired of looking away from pain, tired of being the kind of person who saw someone hurting and did nothing. And now? Now I'm the kind of person who stays, who shows up even when it's hard, who chooses vulnerability over safety." He took her hand. "You did that. You taught me that." "I didn't teach you anything. You taught yourself." "We taught each other." They sat in comfortable silence, watching through the window as Sophie and Ethan built a fort out of couch cushions. The kids were laughing, and the sound drifted through the glass like music. "I used to think I needed to fill some void," Victoria said, "that motherhood or relationship or achievement would make me complete. But sitting here now, I realize I had it backward." "How so?" "I wasn't incomplete. I was just alone. And there's a difference. I didn't need someone to complete me. I needed to learn to be complete on my own, and then choose to share that with other people." That's very philosophical. "My therapist charges $200 an hour. I'm getting my money's worth." Daniel laughed. "You know what the cafe lady told me last week when I went to get coffee?" "What?" "She said she remembered us from that morning last year. Said she'd never seen 2 people look so lost, find each other so completely, asked if we got married yet." "What did you tell her?" "That we're taking it slow." "Are we, though? We moved in together. We're raising kids. We've built an entire life." "Is that a complaint?" "No. It's an observation." Victoria turned to look at him. "I don't need a ring or a wedding to know this is permanent. I chose you. I keep choosing you. That's the commitment that matters." "Good, because I was terrible at planning proposals." "Was?" Am terrible at it. Present tense." She kissed him, and it felt like all the other kisses and none of them, familiar and new simultaneously. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For walking across that cafe, for seeing me when I was falling apart, for staying when I tried to push you away, for building this with me. Thank you for letting me, for trusting me with your mess. for showing me what it looks like to choose vulnerability. Inside, something crashed, probably the couch fort collapsing, followed by kids' laughter. Normal chaos, normal life. We should probably check on them, Victoria said, but didn't move. Probably. They sat there a moment longer, two people who'd found each other in crisis and built something steady from shared broken pieces. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Daniel thought about that October morning, about the choice to cross a cafe and speak to a crying stranger, about how one small act of kindness had cascaded into this, a house, a family, a life he'd been too afraid to hope for. Maybe that was the point. Maybe we're all just one choice away from transformation, one moment of courage away from becoming who we're meant to be. The trick is recognizing the moment when it arrives and being brave enough to act. "Come on," Victoria said, standing and pulling him up. "Let's go save our furniture from destruction." They went inside together, ready to face whatever chaos awaited, ready to keep choosing each other and this messy, imperfect, beautiful life they'd built. Because in the end, that's all any of us can do. Show up, stay present, and trust that choosing connection over safety is worth the risk. Not because it's easy or guaranteed, but because being truly seen by another person, being chosen despite our flaws and fears, is the closest thing to grace we get in this world. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, grace looks like terrible coffee and a stranger's kindness, and two broken people learning to be whole together.